Beautiful night for a ball game. The wind is blowing out. Tiger Stadium. Stay tuned. The ESPN Sunday Night Baseball Game of the Week is brought to you by British Airways, the world's favorite airline. And by Chevrolet Trucks, the most dependable, longest-lasting trucks on the road. Coming up, it's the White Sox with their great slugger Frank Thomas taking on Cecil Fielder and the Tigers. It's the ESPN Sunday Night Game of the Week. Tiger Stadium, I'm John Miller along with Joe Morgan. The ESPN Sunday Night Baseball Game of the Week about to begin. Let's take a look now at the batting order for Terry Bevington's Chicago White Sox. It will be Tony Phillips leading it off in left field, and Phillips off to another great start. Wherever he goes, offense seems to follow. Dave Martinez in center. Frank Thomas at first base. Harold Baines having the big weekend, the DH. Robin Ventura, slow start this year at third base. You see Baines' numbers for this series, unbelievable. Danny Tartable in right, also a slow start. Ron Karkovice, the strong arm catcher. Ray Durham hitting over 300 at second, and Ozzie Guillen is at shortstop, batting ninth. Pitching for the Tigers, 28-year-old right-hander Greg Gore. He's got a very strong arm, Joe, but that earned run average is rather scary, 6.60.
Well, he needs to stay ahead of the hitters, and he needs to get his good stuff over. His real problem is he's got a good changeup, he's got a good curveball, good fastball, but he has to keep the hitters guessing and keep them off balance. They can sit on the fastball, he has problems. And let's take a look at the defense. Travis Fryman at shortstop at third base, has not made an error in his last 39 ball games. He's gone 39 straight without an error. I guess this will be 40.
Yeah, 39, then 40.
Yeah.
That's what I'd go with.
That's what I'd go with, too.
All right, then we're in agreement. Here comes Tony Phillips to lead it off for the Detroit Tigers. Or, there, I did it already. He was here for a number of years and was a great leadoff man for the Tigers, and he's leading it off for his new team, the Chicago White Sox, and he fouls one away, and we are underway here. Gore throws pretty hard, but he has had a hard time with what they call consistency. He's got a very good curveball, but as Buddy Bell pointed out, he doesn't get to use it much because he's always behind on the count. He can't get that fastball over. There's a breaking ball, and it is too low. 1 ball and 1 strike.
And the one thing I do like about him, though, John, is that he does have a changeup that gives him 3 different speeds. If he ever does harness his control, he can become a very good pitcher.
And a foul out of play up onto the rooftop here at Tiger Stadium. It is 1 ball and 2 strikes. I mean, Tony Phillips just is one of the great underrated players in the game. I mean, this guy does not steal bases. He was kind of a late bloomer. It didn't happen for him until maybe 5 or 6 years ago, but he's on base all the time, always setting up RBI opportunities. That's a strike 3, but Flaherty is going to have to throw him out, and he does. Cecil Fielder getting the put out on the strikeout, and that was a pretty good breaking ball there by Gore.
Well, that's what we're talking about, John. That was not a strike, and if he throws that pitch when he's behind in the count, the hitter will not chase it, but if he can stay ahead, he gets hitters to chase his curveball. Now watch, see, that's ball out of the strike zone, but with 2 strikes, Tony Phillips has to go after it. So that's the key. He got ahead of Phillips with 2 fastballs and then was able to put him away with the curveball.
It sounds so simple, but obviously
right.
in execution, that's the difference between a big leaguer and a guy trying to be a big leaguer.
And that's why it's frustrating to a pitching coach, because when a guy has an arm like Gore, you say, well, if he throws strikes, he's going to win, which is the case.
Well, he's ahead of Dave Martinez, and he misses here. 1 ball, 1 strike. Dave Martinez, what a handy player to have. He can play all around the outfield. He can play first base, and he runs well, and he's a very fine left-handed hitter. I mean, he's gotten to be a very good hitter. He didn't used to be years ago. Up the middle, Alan Trammell can't get there. Base hit for Dave Martinez in front of the big guy. Frank Thomas is coming up. 1 out, 1 on. Frank Thomas coming to the plate. And Thomas, at the start of the day, leading the American League in RBIs. Now, Albert Bell had 2 runs batted in today against the Texas Rangers. So Albert now with 45 RBIs. Thomas is next with 44. And Mo Vaughn also moved ahead of him today with a big ball game in Boston. Thomas is right there amongst them. It's a foul off to the right. And you see Thomas behind that pitch, Joe. That means he must have a little something extra on that fastball.
He's got a real good fastball. In fact, Thomas is giving him some respect to start with. Watch where he stands in the batter's box. He's got his back foot out of the batter's box. He's farther back than he should be allowed. He steps back. See, his back foot is actually out of the batter's box. You want me to call down and tell?
Well, if Flaherty would mention it, they'd make him move up. There goes the runner. Flaherty's throw offline, and it's a steal for Dave Martinez, his 4th steal of the year.
Actually, a very good pitch for Flaherty to throw on. A fastball up and in, but a good jump by Martinez. And the throw is on the shortstop side, which makes it almost impossible to get back in time to get Martinez.
So an RBI chance now for Frank Thomas. He hits homers, but he's also hitting .336. He's just a good hitter. That is strike 2.
Well, I like the fact that he's going after Thomas. You know, in a lot of cases, guys try to pitch around Thomas with a runner at second base, try to get him to swing his balls out of the strike zone, which he rarely does. But he went right after him with the good curveball.
Which also says that they know Baines is a guy to be respected now.
Exactly.
They'll not be so quick to pitch around the big hurt. Fastball inside. You see 91 miles an hour on our Jugs got a reading there. So that means he's got a pretty good one. 2-2 the count to Thomas. 34 walks for Frank, so most pitchers still hesitate to pitch to him. 2-2.
Good pitch.
Very good.
Well, he's wasted 2 fastballs in off the plate to Thomas to keep him honest, keep him from diving out there on the breaking ball away, and he got that pitch away from him. Watch this pitch is away. Thomas really can't do anything with it. That's the kind you hope he puts in play if you're a defense, because he's not going to hurt you with that swing.
He needs another good pitch here. 2-2 the count. And the slider in the dirt. Nice save there by Flaherty, keeping Martinez at second base. 3-2 the count now.
Well, there you see Harold Baines on deck. You know, John, when you have a pitcher like Gore, pitch selection becomes more important than it would be for a guy that you know can throw strikes on any pitch. So you have to set the hitter up quickly.
Well, he ends up walking him after all of that. And that will bring up Harold Baines, the man who has been wreaking havoc on the Tigers staff this weekend. Every time they walk Thomas, it seems like Baines launches one into the upper deck in right field. 8 runs batted in the 2 games of this series. Baines for the year is hitting .323, and his RBI total 7th best in the American League. 2 men on here. Right to second, and no chance to get the double play. Both Martinez and Thomas getting back to their bags. Nice play in second there by the young second baseman, Mark Lewis, former National League with the Reds last year.
Also a very good pitch by Gore. The ball started in the middle of the plate and looked like a little cut fastball or a slider. Jumped in on the hands of Baines, and he hit a soft line drive to second base.
Now you see Robert Ventura. Now this is a guy that you always expect to hit around 290, 300. And I'm sure before the year's over, he'll be up there with his 25 homers, 90-something RBIs. But he was off to a painfully slow start this year. Ventura at 238 coming in, and he takes ball 1. Greg Gore trying to get his club off to a good start here. The Tigers have been playing behind all year long. That one is cracked to right, but it's going to stay in the ballpark. And Nieves makes the catch. So a couple of liners turn into outs. The White Sox do not score. Tigers are coming up. And Buddy keeping his head up, although it's been a very difficult time for his Tigers. And you see their offense, they started out very well, but lately they've not been hitting either. Chad Curtis leads off in left field. Alan Trammell, the veteran, in the lineup at short. Travis Fryman, he's having a very fine year, third base. Fielder got 12 homers at first base, and he has hit Alvarez hard. 4 homers in 24 lifetime at bats against him. Mel Nieves in right field, former National Leaguers, hit a couple of home runs the last few days. It'll be Ed Williams, the DH. Mark Lewis at second base, also having a fine year. Flaherty, the catcher, and Camara Barty, Rule 5 draftee, in center field. for Detroit. The pitcher, Wilson Alvarez, left-hander, once threw a no-hitter against Baltimore, and he's got very good stuff.
He's got excellent stuff. Very good fastball, good curveball, changeup. I mean, he has the whole package, and he can be overpowering at times.
You see, averages a strikeout per inning, fewer hits than innings pitched. Here's Chad Curtis. And that is ball one. Now, one of the problems that Alvarez has had over the years has been that his control will sometimes desert him. He'll start walking people, he'll start falling behind on counts, and that's when he has problems. That's a foul back out of play. You see 91 miles an hour, so Alvarez had some of the best stuff of any left-hander in the league. You see the walks have been up this year from where they were, and even the 4.8 walks per 9 innings of that spread a little bit deceiving because he had gotten those down in the last couple of years in that time. The pitch is high for ball 2, but they're up this year, and that's why his ERA, or one of the reasons why his ERA is at 5 coming into the game. Very high for him. 2-1. Changeup misses. 3-1. Alan Trammell, the veteran, is on deck, and it's kind of, I keep looking around for Lou Whitaker. You see right. Trammell, where's Lou? But Lou Whitaker, the great Tiger second baseman for so many years, has retired. Curtis has also hit Alvarez well over the years. And this time he takes the walk.
John, you mentioned earlier that the Tigers got off to a good start. Let's take a look at the defense for the White Sox. Well, Robin Ventura at third base, he's working on an errorless streak as well. He's only made 1 error through the 41 games this season. Last year he made 4 or 5 errors in the first week of the season, so off to a better start this year. In fact, he's gone 38 straight without an error, so
both he and Travis Fryman have long errorless streaks going. Curtis at first. He has 6 steals this year, leading the Tigers. And here's Alan Trammell, 265 batting average. Bluffs the butt, takes the breaking ball in there for a called strike. Now, Curtis, the runner at first, grew up here in Michigan. Was a great Tiger fan, and his hero as a kid, and I don't know if Alan Trammell likes to hear this, his hero was Alan Trammell.
That's okay. Just means that Alan has been around a long time.
Yeah, it means he's an old guy.
Yeah, but you'd rather be an old guy playing than an old guy retired.
And that is strike 2 call. Tim McClellan back at the plate. So a couple of off-speed pitches to Trammell, both of them in there. And now Alvarez has him right where he wants him. Now, after Trammell, you get into a little power here with the Tigers. Fryman and Fielder. And when you've got some men on base, those guys can give a left-hander a lot of trouble. And Curtis back to the bag at first, being held on over there by Frank Thomas. Tigers have scored some runs in this series. They got 4 yesterday in the first 3 innings. And they were in a 6-6 tie going into extra innings on Friday. The White Sox had to come from behind in the 8th inning to tie that game. And the count now 1 ball and 2 strikes to Trammell. And you see again, Alvarez has not yet thrown Trammell a fastball.
Well, he has gotten the breaking ball over, which has also defeated the Tigers' purpose here for a second, because Trammell's a very good hit-and-run man. If they could have gotten the count in their favor, I guarantee you they would have tried something to put the runner in motion, but he fell behind early.
That's fouled off to the right. And they came in with some hard stuff there, 92 miles per hour. 1 ball and 2 strikes to Trammell. No score in the game. The Tigers would like to get something going here. I mean, this has just been a nightmare for a month. 4 wins and 25 losses. They've lost 5 in a row this week. Buddy Bell is in his first year as a big league manager. And Curtis back to the bag at first.
Well, I'm sure the White Sox are aware of Trammell's ability to hit the ball behind the runner. So they want to make sure that they keep Curtis close at first base.
Big hole on the right side. Durham, the second baseman, shaded a bit toward the middle. Thomas on the bag at first. See, Trammell's hit a few home runs against Alvarez. That one is foul on the left field side.
It's interesting you mentioned the fact that he has a big hole on the right side because Durham is shading himself towards second base for the double play. That's kind of a characteristic of a young second baseman, a guy that's working his way into the big leagues. You know, he's been told that you have to play a certain distance from the bag to complete the double play. And as he gets more experience, he'll know which hitters can go the other way and lean one way or the other and close that hole off a little bit.
Fastball's inside. 2-2, and on Trammell is making him show everything here. I mean, Travis Fryman on deck, I think, is seen a lot of the Wilson Alvarez repertoire here with Trammell up there.
He's also worked the count back where if they want to put the runner in motion, pretty good time, except the third base coach is saying stay there, get back. He saw something from someplace. Now they're changing the sign. I think there was a hit and run on. Now he's changing the sign. The third base coach pointed at Curtis at first base and said stay there, meaning they were going to come over to first base.
Terry Francona is the new third base coach for the Tigers. That one is shot foul right past Francona. We saw Francona a couple of years ago when we went down to Memphis, Tennessee, and broadcast a Birmingham Barons game. He was the manager down there. He managed Michael Jordan when Jordan became a professional baseball player.
Phil Jackson managed him pretty well today also.
I hadn't heard. Did they play? Trammell to the right side, base hit. Curtis to second. He's going to head for third. Carnival's throw up high. Runners at first and third. Nobody out, and the power is coming out.
And that's what Trammell does so well. He takes the ball behind the runner and takes advantage of the hole on the right side. Although that was a line drive base hit, if it would have been a ground ball, it's also going to be a base hit. Good hitting by Trammell. You see the ball's down and away. He just slaps it to the right side. At first, Curtis was going to stop right there. He slows up. He chops his steps, and he's still able to make it. The throw is offline, as you can see. Good play there by Ventura to keep it from getting away.
Well, Charnable, he is one of those guys that the book on him is run on him. And, well, we got an example why right there. The throw is way offline. Here is Travis Fryman. And Fryman has been a great RBI man. Wide of third. Curtis will come home. There's one. Durham back to first. Double play. So he does not get an RBI there. And it is 1-0 Detroit, but that's not what they had in mind with runners at first and third. Fryman with 31 RBIs coming into this game.
And one of the things that the White Sox have been impressed with is that Durham has improved at second base. You see the throw over by, he comes across, takes the step. Nice turn there at second base by Durham. They've been impressed with the fact that he's learned to make the pivot better. Had some problems early in his career.
Well, here's the big man, Cecil Fielder. And he says that early in the season, teams pitched to him. And he was having a great time. The fastball down and away. 1 ball and no strikes. He had, in one 16-game stretch, he hit 9 home runs. But they have quit pitching to him, as you might expect. Be a pretty good strategy.
Yes.
And he has struggled. A curveball, and he fouls it off. 1 ball, 1 strike.
And it's been very frustrating for Cecil this year, John, because he came in to camp in the best shape of his life. You can see that he is still smaller, and he was planning on having a big season. He got off to a good start, and now they're struggling. But that's the reason the Tigers were off to a good start, because of Cecil's bat early in the season.
Slider inside, ball 2. 2-1 to Fielder. Fielder says, when I talked to him before the ball game, that the idea is still to win, even with a bad ball club. And he changed up on it. 2-2 the count, but Fielder says that he's in an RBI spot. When it seems that they're pitching around him, as we look at the pitch again, he will expand that strike zone, because he says, my job is not to walk. My job is to drive those guys in. If I don't, who is? 2-2 the count to Fielder. And the slider misses, and it's a full count now.
And to be honest with you, John, I think, other than Buddy Bell, I think Fielder's taking these losses harder than anyone else. You know, I talked to him a lot about it, and I'll give you some of our conversation as the game progresses.
3-2 the count. Popped him up. Ray Durham, and you see the wind was carrying that one. Durham had to backpedal. Well, the Tigers get just the one, but they are leading 1-0 over the White Sox after 1. Carcabice, and then Ray Durham.
This is when Gore gets in trouble, having to throw a fastball to a good fastball hitter.
They got that one past him. 2-1. Judge got had it at 86.
Yeah, that was not his fastball. They took a little off. It looked more of a sinker there. Good pitch. Good 2-0 pitch.
2-1. That one is hit high in the air to center, but in this ballpark, you want him to hit it to center. Marty, the wind carrying it. Look out! He did not catch it. And Tarnable's into second base. He got winds of 20 to 25 miles an hour tonight, and Barty, the young outfielder, did not allow for that.
Well, John, they're also the second worst defensive team statistically in the American League. Only the Boston Red Sox have played poor defense. Well, I thought he said he had it, and now he starts going back, and the wind just continues to take it over his head. And obviously that's a mistake of a young player. You should know the wind's blowing out, and you always stay behind the ball rather than coming up to it, as he did there. Let the wind bring it to you.
And he will be charged with an error. Here is Ron Carcabice. That for the Tigers, you mentioned their poor defense. That is the 41st error of the year. They've averaged nearly one per game. And those are the kinds of things they have not recovered from very well.
Well, it's very difficult for a young pitching staff or a pitching staff that's struggling to overcome mistakes that are made in the field. You start to give teams 4 outs, and it puts more pressure on them. And especially in this situation where the leadoff hitter gets on, he should still be pitching from the windup. Instead, he's in the stretch. So it makes a big difference as far as the pitching is concerned.
Carcabice has power. Broken back rounder. That'll keep Tarnable at second. Alan Trammell throws him out, and there is one away.
Now, I was talking to Cecil before the game, and he and Frank Thomas, myself, and Phillips were talking, and he said, Joe, he said, take a look at me. And if he'll turn around, I'll show you what he was talking about. He said, look at my beard. He said, I got gray in my beard. He said, when the season started, there was no gray in it at all. He said, I lay awake at night, and I woke up one morning, I had gray in my beard after worrying all night about this ball club.
Here's Ray Durham. Outstanding rookie season last year, coming back now. He's off to a very fine start in his sophomore year. .316 batting average, 5 homers, and 25 driven in. It's a lot of RBIs. Just off the outside, and Gore is behind him, 2-0. Guillen, that left-handed hitter, is on deck. Well, see Durham in a particularly hot streak right now. 429 the last 10 games. 1-0, Tigers ahead. Runner at second, 1 out. That's foul deep down the right field line. And the count is 2-1 to Durham. Well, I talked to Cecil before the game, and I said to Cecil, why don't you just forget about all of this stuff and just say it's a bad ball club.
Right.
If they're going to walk you, take the walk. If you get 120 walks, get 120 walks. And he said, well, I'm out there. My job is to try and win. And that's the only way I know how to play.
And, John, I wasn't there, but I could have told you what he was going to say to you. I mean, that's the kind of guy Cecil is. And he says, look, they pay me a lot of money here, which they do, and it's my job to get it done.
3-1 to Durham. And that's a foul out of play. Another nice pitch there by Gore. 3-2 the count. Tiger Stadium in Detroit near sundown in the Motor City. The wind blowing hard out toward right field. And at twilight time, we're reminded that the long life of this ballpark is perhaps in its twilight. He struck him out. Durham is down.
Well, both strikeouts for Gore have come with 2 strikes and a breaking ball that they chase out of the strike zone, and there it is. And see, remember one thing about a curveball. If with 2 strikes, you do not want it to be a strike. You start it in the strike zone and let it break out of the strike zone, and the hitter chases it. You see, he has good, tight rotation on that curveball. Makes it a little more difficult to recognize the spin when it's that tight.
Here's Ozzie Guillen. And this guy's been around forever now, Joe. I mean, I still think of him as a young guy because he has that young demeanor. I mean, he's still out there having a great time. He doesn't seem like a grizzled veteran, although he says his body is feeling that way these days.
Well, he still plays well defensively, but he's starting to struggle a little bit you know, from the offensive side, you know, he was, you know, a couple of years ago, he was turned into a pretty good offensive player, but he's starting to struggle just a little bit.
Well, one thing we know about him, if you throw it, he's likely to swing at it. That is a strike on the outside. There, he took one, and what good did it do him? 0-2 the count to Guillen.
Well, see, let's take this a step further. See, right now, Gore should be out of this inning. So, that, you know, and forgetting about earned runs is what it does to you psychologically.
Nice easy hop there for Lewis, and he throws out Guillen. Well, you got to give a tip of the cap to Greg Gore. He gave his team a lift and got out of the jam. 1-0 Detroit after 1.5. I'm John Miller with Joe Morgan. Next Sunday we'll be at the Kingdome in Seattle, the Yankees and the Mariners. And Joe, Dwight Gooden, a no-hitter this week, and perhaps we'll see him next Sunday. He's scheduled right now to work next Sunday night.
Well, I'm looking forward to it anyway, because the last time we saw those two teams hook up in the playoffs, it was just great there in Seattle. So should be another good series.
Gooden and the Yankees, he's scheduled to go Tuesday now, which would put him in line to pitch the Sunday night ball game from the Kingdome in Seattle against Ken Griffey Jr. and the Seattle Mariners. The Mariners having to kind of limp along right now with a pitching staff that is really hampered because the big unit, Randy Johnson, is out of action and will be probably until around the 1st of June. So Lou Pinella's ball club's got to just kind of keep pace until they get the big guy back. Here's Mel Nieves taking strike one from Alvarez. Nieves, powerful switch hitter. Fastball is too low. 1 ball, 1 strike. He's hit a couple of home runs here in the last few days. He's got 6
on the roof.
That's right. A roof shot
hitting right left-handed.
And all 6 of his home runs have been hit as a left-handed hitter. That's a foul. And you mentioned that home run over the roof, Joe, so let's take a look at it here against the White Sox. On to Trumbull Street. That was the voice of the Hall of Fame voice of the Tigers, Ernie Harwell. Still doing some games on cable television here in Detroit. Long gone. And when you clear the roof here, that's for sure. It is long gone.
And John, 2 innings before he hit the home run, they had put on the scoreboard who was the last player that hit a ball on the roof.
And now he is the last.
Yeah, but before that, they had a chance to answer the question, and then he came up and hit one.
That's a foul. 1 ball, 2 strikes. So he was the last one.
Immediately, everyone had the answer.
Was it Mickey Tettleton?
No, Kruger.
Oh, Chad Kruger.
Chad Kruger.
Yeah, Kruger.
Kruger. I said Kruger. Yeah, Chad Kruger. Not the pitcher. Not the pitcher. Not the left-handed pitcher. But Kruger, the catcher.
Kruger, who was in the ballpark tonight.
Yeah, and that was the reason that they used it, because he was in the ballpark. You know, they usually try something like that.
Nice irony.
Yeah. But I was told that was the only home run he hit that year, too.
Well, here is Nieves. Used to be with the Padres. And Randy Smith traded for him there. And it's 2-2. He was part of the Fred McGriff trade. Came from Atlanta to San Diego. But he's so far been one of these guys who strikes out a lot, but also hits some home runs. He's hitting .264 for the Tigers this year. They take that. If he can hit those home runs, I mean, it's a guy who could hit 25, 30 home runs if he played regularly. And you see, in a 3-year period in the minors there, 26 homers was an average year for him. The big, strong guy, Mel Nieves. Eddie Williams on deck. And he struck him out with a slider. Now we've got an update. Here is Bill Pino.
All right, John, thanks a lot. Network MCI takes us to 3-Com Park. 2nd and 2 for the Giants and the Mets. Bottom of the 4th. Minor the wild pitch. Barry Bonds is going to come in to score. Made it Giants in front by the score of 5-1. Right now, that's the score in the top of the 7th. Paul Wilson for the Mets gave up 5 earned runs in 4 innings. He's gone. Mark Gardner, John, has struck out 10 for the Giants.
All right. Thank you, Bill. And here is Eddie Williams, another former Padre. He takes ball 1. The Giants won the first game of that doubleheader 1-0 back of Alan Watson over Jason Isringhausen. That's ball 2 to Eddie Williams. And that's not a bad day if you could sweep a doubleheader facing Isringhausen and Paul Wilson, 2 of the outstanding young pitchers in the game today. Wilson, though, he's struggling, Joe.
Yes.
2-0 the count.
lot of people in New York think it's more mental than physical. And he's just still adjusting to being a big league pitcher.
2-1. And that breaking ball is a called strike. 2-2 to Eddie Williams. 2 balls, 2 strikes. Eddie Williams got 5 home runs for Detroit, hitting only .223 though. He had been with San Diego. He had his career resurrected. He was out of baseball. He was playing in what they called a beer league. Padres scout was in the same league and saw him hit and said, you know, we ought to give this guy a tryout. He'd been in the big leagues prior. And he came up with the Padres halfway through the year and hit a lot of home runs in the big leagues there. Last year he kind of tailed off, and now here he is with Detroit. 3-2 to Eddie Williams. There's a view from the upper deck out in right field. And here at Tiger Stadium, a lot of home runs will reach that upper deck. The upper deck here actually overhangs the field by a few feet. Strike 3 call. Baseball on the outside.
Williams thought he was going to tail away, and it did not tail as much as he thought. And we'll take a look at it. Fastball on the outside part of the plate right there. Karkovic knew it was a strike. Yeah, good pitch. Good pitch.
A little too close to take on with 2 strikes.
Well, sometimes you take them because you can't hit them, John, not because you think it's a ball.
Take it and then hope.
Yeah, and hope for the best. That's all.
Here's Mark Lewis. Now this guy hit real well last year for Cincinnati as a guy off the bench. Played here for a couple days, there for a couple days, sat, pinch hit. Now he's with the Tigers getting a shot to play every day, and he's hitting here. .319 batting average for Mark Lewis. And 7 home runs. Now this guy was a high draft choice of the Cleveland Indians a number of years back, but it just never happened for him in Cleveland. Always considered a disappointment there. Well, there's Alvarez. I mean, 93-mile-an-hour heat, Joe, behind in the count, and he could just blew it past him there. 2-1.
That's the difference between a very good pitcher and an average pitcher. 2-0, he can throw the fastball by you, whereas an average pitcher has trouble just throwing a strike with it.
3-1. But it's nice to see a guy like Mark Lewis. I mean, this guy was considered a huge disappointment in Cleveland. And indeed he was. I mean, they thought he was going to be a star. That's a foul. And of course, those were the days when what was happening in Cleveland was similar to what's happening here in Detroit right now. The Indians are at the bottom. And unlike Detroit, they had been at the bottom for a long, long time. See, Lewis has developed some power muscles this year, which will happen to the guys who start playing in Tiger Stadium regularly. 3-2 the count. That's a foul off to the right.
So far, Alvarez is showing that he's not afraid to throw breaking pitches or off-speed pitches when he's behind in the count. He threw him a 3-1 breaking ball and also came back with a 3-2 off-speed pitch. So he has really mixed his pitches early here in the ball game. That just makes his fastball look that much faster.
That is caught by Durham. And the inning is over. 3 up and 3 down. Top of the order coming with the White Sox. Tony Phillips, Dave Martinez, and then Frank Thomas. 1-0 Detroit. Greg Gore. Fastball misses outside. Now Phillips struck out his first time. He'll be followed by Dave Martinez and then Frank Thomas. Phillips, a guy who came up with the Oakland Athletics when Ricky Henderson was there, and he gives Henderson a lot of the credit for his developing into a very fine leadoff man. And when you watch him up there, even as a left-handed hitter, he reminded of Henderson a little bit. When he gets down in that crouch, he presents a very small strike zone, and he gets a lot of walks, as does Ricky.
Well, I believe that you couldn't learn from anyone better than Ricky Henderson how to be a leadoff man. Ricky is probably the greatest leadoff hitter in the history of the game because he could hit the ball out of the ballpark as well as walk and steal bases for you. So he learned from a master.
You see, he's been 27 times on base in the last 13 games, twice a game. I mean, for the year, he's almost done that. 32 walks and 47 hits. That's 79 times reaching base in 41 games. Now, when you've got guys like Frank Thomas, Thomas hitting behind you, and you're on base twice again. Frank's going to get some RBIs out of that. Base hit. That's the other thing. He doesn't just walk up there. I mean, this guy's a guy who hits well for average and hits home runs. You mentioned the comparison, Joe, with he and Ricky Henderson.
Well, very similar, except one is left-handed, of course, Tony Phillips being a switch hitter. And the deep crouch from both. They both stay down. I think that's the key. If you're going to hit out of a crouch, you have to stay in that crouch. You can't start in a crouch and raise up. Too much head movement.
Dave Martinez with Phillips at first, but unlike Ricky Henderson, Tony Phillips, now the guy's going to steal many bases. Well, that's a base hit for Dave Martinez. He is 2 for 2, and now the runners are out there just the way the White Sox like it, with Frank Thomas coming up.
Well, he did something good against Frank Thomas in the first inning, John. He established that he would come inside with the fastball. He threw a couple of fastballs off the plate inside to Frank, and then he went away with a breaking ball. And if you come inside hard, that establishes that you're not afraid to come in there, and that it also opens up the outer part of the plate. So we'll see how he pitches Frank in this particular at bat.
Man,
let's take a look at the pitches we're talking about. First pitch with a fastball, breaking ball away.
And then eventually he ended up walking Thomas on a 3-2 count. Oh, nice pitch. And again, Joe, he took a little something off, 85 miles an hour down and away to Frank.
Well, if you throw the fastball, you throw a 90-mile-an-hour fastball, I don't care how good the hitter is, he has to be ready for that. And if you're able to change speeds on him as he did there, then you've got him. I mean, you know, Frank's going to obviously make adjustments as he goes along in the count.
And that fastball, 91 miles an hour off the catcher.
Yeah, but you see how he's got Frank a little confused there. He was out in front of the changeup, and he was behind the fastball. See, Frank's a little upset with himself because he let the breaking ball first pitch get in the back of his mind, and he threw him a fastball. That's what hit pitching is really all about, changing speeds and moving the ball around. And he's done a good job with Frank so far. But again, it's only 2 strikes, and Frank adjusts very well. He will go into his fundamentals. He will stay with looking hard stuff and adjusting to the breaking stuff now. He will not be able to throw the fastball by him.
2 men on, nobody out. 1-0 Detroit ahead. The 2-strike pitch.
That's the pitch he threw in the first inning that gave Frank a little wake-up call, but it also opens up the outside part of the plate. And that's just good pitching. He's not throwing it, Frank. He's off the plate inside, and Frank really kind of dives in a little bit anyway. But what you want to do as a pitcher is establish, hey, I will come inside, because that opens up the outside part of the plate.
There's Tony Phillips, who singled. He's at second. Dave Martinez, who also singled, is at first. 1-2 to Frank Thomas. And he works to the outside. Took something off that fastball again. 2-2 the count now to Frank. I mean, in this ballpark in particular, I mean, it just doesn't look big enough for Frank Thomas.
I mean, it's not, John.
I mean, left field is beckoning.
Any direction.
3-2. Now Gore has run out of room to maneuver with Big Frank, and Harold Baines is on deck.
Yeah, but you can see Gore's problem right there. He threw the ball inside. He had Frank 2 strikes. Now he's overthrown 2 pitches in a row. Now it's 3-2. Now he's not ahead anymore.
Base hit. Charging the ball to left field is Curtis, and Phillips will be held at third. The throw cut off by Fryman. And the bases are loaded with nobody out, and the red-hot Baines coming up.
Well, see, that's what I said about Frank. He would not be able to throw the fastball by him anymore. He's adjusting. He's sitting fastball and adjusting. He gets the fastball and he rips it in the hole. And that's why he's such a great hitter. I mean, he made 2 good pitches, but you have to make 3 sometimes to get these better hitters out. And he made 2 good pitches, not 3. So Frank ripped the other one into left field for a base hit.
I think what you're saying, though, is it really was the 1-2 pitch and the 2-2 pitch that cost him.
That cost him. He had Frank off balance, but he continued to throw hard stuff, missed with it, and then he gets back to an even count.
Well, here's the man who's been killing the Tigers this weekend, Harold Baines. He lined to second in his first at bat tonight. Baines with 5 RBIs, Friday other night and 3 more yesterday. Baines also hit his 11th grand slam the other day. Second among active grand slam hitters. And it is 2-0. The bases are loaded. Phillips, third base. Dave Martinez, second base. And Frank Thomas at first. All three have hit singles here. Now John Matlack, the pitching coach for the Tigers this year, is out to have a chat with his right-hander, who's in all kinds of trouble here, even though he's got a 1-run lead.
And John, I said earlier in the game, I said pitch selection for a guy like Gore is far more important than it is to Alvarez. And by that I meant if he gets in trouble, he becomes a thrower. And I think you have to be able to establish in his mind, if you're the catcher, make him work. He's thrown 2 hard pitches, overthrown both of them here to Harold Baines. Now the count is 2-0. In my opinion, he should have made one of those pitches a curveball or a changeup. You know, make him work. Don't let him just stand out there and rear back and throw the ball, because you can't do that and win in the big leagues anymore. Everybody can handle a fastball now.
Well, this could be a pitch to turn this game around. 2-0. Nice pitch on the outside corner.
And that is a pitch that could turn the game around. I mean, that was a very important pitch, as you stated. That was a key pitch in this ballgame. Now he's at least 2-1, but he still has to make 2 more good pitches.
Another big one right here. And he missed 3-1 to Baines. Well, he's gone as far as he can go now. And another very fine left-handed hitter on deck, Robin Ventura. 3 men on, nobody out. 3-1 to the great veteran Harold Baines. And he walked it. And he has walked in the tying run. And Buddy Bell has seen this before. He's seen this yesterday and the day before that, and most days in 1996.
Well, people that were home and that watched the telecast, we said earlier that he had good stuff, but he wasn't winning. People say, if you have good stuff, why isn't he winning? I think you're getting a very good example of it right here. He does have good stuff, but these are some pretty good hitters, and you just have to limit your mistakes.
Robin Ventura. That one deep into left center. Marty back. A grand slam homer. Robin Ventura. And now it is a 5-run inning for Chicago. The 8th grand slam of Ventura's career. And this time, there was no maneuvering at all. The first pitch he saw from Gore, Ventura hit it over the 400-foot marker out in extremely deep left center field.
Well, the pitch is up. It's the first pitch. Is always probably the most important. It's up. It looks like it's supposed to be a breaking ball or a slider or a curve, but it's only spinning, and it stays up. And if you make a mistake like that, it becomes like a mediocre fastball if it's only spinning. And Ventura hits it over the left center field wall, but he also had a little wind help. That ball really carried well.
The opposite field. And, of course, that wind is blowing out 20 to 25 miles an hour tonight. Better, Danny Tarnum, 0-1 the count. Tarnum safe on a fly ball that should have been caught, but Barty did not catch it because of the wind. Bullpen activity, by the way, for the Tigers now. 5-run inning for the White Sox. And, of course, that's been a season-long lament for Detroit. They have not been able to stay out of those big innings. Chicago had a 7-run inning in the game yesterday. 2-2 to Charlo. There's nobody out of this inning. Here's Jose Lima warming up in the Tiger bullpen. Right-hander. Strong arm, and that is the first out of the inning.
Tartabull hits this ball sharply down the line, but we mentioned Fryman has been playing very well at third base, and he slides over. This is a nice play in that he makes sure he stays down on it. He knows it's hit hard enough that he has time to get up and make the throw, so his priority was to make sure he would catch the ball. Good job there by Fryman, staying down on that ball.
Now here is Ron Karkovice. 5-1, Chicago. Trammell. Now number 2. Trammell's been doing that for forever, it seems like. 2 down, nobody on, and Ray Durham is coming up. There's the look. at Tiger Stadium from the upper deck in right field. Ballpark opened in 1912 on the very same day as did Fenway Park in Boston. And both of them opened less than a week after the Titanic struck an iceberg and sunk. So a lot of history was being made that particular week in 1912.
You and these ships.
0-1 to Ray Durham. I mean, the Parks probably didn't get their just due because the Titanic was in the headlines all that week. But they've made up for it since.
Okay.
They've been in the news for, what, 85 years since then.
So has the Titanic.
Also true. 1 ball and 2 strikes, the count to Ray Durham. You know, in a way, the difference right now in this ball game, the White Sox with this big inning, and Wilson Alvarez kept the Tigers from doing the same thing when he was in trouble in the first. Fielder, nice pickup, but well, I said pickup. Actually, it hit his glove and rolled away, and it's a base hit for Durham.
I think one of the things about Fielder is he's an underrated infielder. He's a pretty good first baseman. A lot of people say, well, you know, think of him as a DH, but he plays the back first base pretty well. And watch, he gets a good jump on it. Just hits off his glove. He still tries to barehand it, but not able to come up with it.
Now Ozzie Guillen comes up. Guillen grounded out to second his first time. 5-1. Chicago, a 5-run third inning here for the White Sox. Guillen grounded out to second his first time. He's the 9th batter of this inning. In the first inning, Detroit had runners at first and third, nobody out. And Fryman and Fielder coming up. Had a chance to do some damage to Alvarez, but he immediately got Fryman to hit a double play ball. 1 run scored, and that was the end of the trouble. Gore unable to keep the big inning from happening here with the big Chicago hitters out. Greg Gore, 28 years old, so he's not just a rookie. He's been around a long while. However, his experience is somewhat lacking. You know, he never played baseball in high school. He went to the University of Santa Clara. He's from that area, the South San Francisco Bay Area. And he was a walk-on outfielder for the Santa Clara baseball team. Back to the bag at first is Durham, who's got excellent speed. And he started dabbling with pitching as a freshman in college. He still does take some classes in the offseason at Santa Clara now. Greg Gore. And that's a little bit high. But I think he also serves to underscore how difficult this game is. I mean, he's got everything you would expect from a guy who could be a winner in the big leagues. Good arm, breaking ball, changeup, but he doesn't win. His earned run average coming into play tonight, 6.60. Mark Lewis throws out Guillen, and that's the inning. But it's a 5-run inning for the Chicago White Sox. Robin Ventura, the big blow, the grand slam. Greg Gore gives up 5 in the third. From Detroit, and now the Tigers in a familiar position. They've got to play comeback, down 5-1. John Flaherty, the catcher, takes a called strike. Flaherty, former Boston Red Sox draft choice, broke into the big leagues with the Red Sox in '92. Facing Wilson Alvarez here. Ozzie Guillen. Ozzie does everything with a certain flair, doesn't he?
Yeah, that was a little different. He kind of surrounded that ball. It was a little different anyway. But that's Ozzie. Like I say, he plays with a flair. I mean, you know. And watch this ball. It's a slow ground ball. Normally, the shortstop just comes in, gets in front of it. He comes off, fields it off to the side, takes a step, and throws. But that's the way he plays the position. Now, if that was Cal Ripken, he would have gotten in front of it, picked it up, taken one more step, and make the throw. You know, it's kind of one guy does it one way and another. But that's why.
Here's Camara Barty. That was a bunt. You know, if he'd bunted it just a little bit harder, he might have hit a home run on that ball. Barty. And he's a Rule 5 draftee. He had been with the Twins last year. He was part of the trade with Baltimore that sent Scott Erickson to Baltimore. Then the Orioles redrafted him in the Rule 5 draft this past winter. And then they put him on waivers to try and send him to the minor leagues in spring training, and the Tigers claimed him on waivers, so he's now their Rule 5 draftee. Barty, they think, has the ability to be a very fine center fielder, particularly in this ballpark with such a huge center field area. But at this point, he really is not a big league hitter. And it looks like, although he runs real well, he needs a little work on his bunting game, I'd say, Joe, from what I've seen. Although, you know, with that same kind of technique on his bunting, Joe, I can see him hit a lot of extra base hits with that one. Here is Chad Curtis, 2-0 the count to him. He's the leadoff man. And started the first inning with a walk and scored the Tigers' run. Wilson Alvarez pitching with a 5-1 lead now in the last of the third. Alvarez been kind of an enigmatic figure for the White Sox, like almost the whole staff last year when the season started. He wasn't ready, and he was terrible. Put on a lot of weight and was just not pitching well. Last year he went 8-11, but the year before that 12-8, and the year before that 15-8. And you see the lack of progress these last couple of years. We got plenty of time to turn it around this year. And that's ball 4 to Curtis. So Alan Trammell will come up. You know, Alan Trammell, a lot of people thought maybe he would retire after last year, but he thought about it and really did not want to retire. He didn't want to go anywhere else, but said if the Tigers would like to have him, he'd like to play. And they said, hey, this is still a handyman to have around. And they like the fact that Trammell maybe can have a positive influence on some of these young guys.
And I think that's a good point. I mean, he can have a positive influence on some of these young guys. But I would say that looking at their pitching staff, they would need someone like that on their pitching staff. A veteran pitcher who could have a positive influence on some of these young pitchers they have.
Show them how it's done.
Yeah.
Popped him up. Ventura will give way to Ian. And that is the inning. So Trammell is 1 for 2. One man left on. Top of the order again for Detroit. Phillips, Martinez, and Frank Thomas. Detroit, and we continue now. Top of the 4th, and once again, here's Tony Phillips. It seems like Phillips leads off every inning. This is the 3rd time in the first 4 innings of the game that he has led off an inning. He is 1 for 2. Gore curves him, and there's a strike. There's that curveball we were looking for with Frank Thomas up there.
Yeah, I think if you were the pitcher, I think you had to throw Frank that curveball because you know he was geared up to try to take you deep on the fastball.
I mean, not that Frank Thomas is a guy that it's easy just to put him away, but I mean, he had him set up for that.
Right.
That's, I think, what you pointed out so well. He had him 0-2, threw that fastball right there inside. And then he threw 2 pitches that really served no purpose at all.
That's the point. All you pitchers, every pitch has a purpose. And as you said, the 1 and 2 and the 2 and 2 really didn't seem to serve any purpose. I mean, they were just pitches that he would look like he was throwing to try to get Frank to chase something rather than try to get him out.
Frank Thomas in the hole. Do a 3rd of the inning. Dave Martinez on deck. Well, now he comes right in there to Tony Phillips. And let's see if that is to set him up for something.
But a lot of pitchers make mistakes with Frank Thomas. Or he hits their good pitches anyway, so
he's intimidated.
Yeah, that's true.
2-2 to Phillips. Curveball. Got the ground ball. Mark Lewis is 1 away. Tony Phillips. Now this guy, they got him here, but he did start the rally in the 3rd inning. Look what he did here in Detroit. 1994, Tigers averaged nearly 6 runs a game. Then, look over in 1994, the California Angels, 4.7 runs a game. He left Detroit. They lost more than a run a game. He went to California, and look at that, 5.5 runs a game last year. Only the Cleveland Indians outscored the Angels. Now the Angels lost him, and look where they have gone. At the start of the day, dead last in the American League in runs per game. That hit Gore in the shin, but he gets Dave Martinez, and then he hits the deck. Boy, he really got nailed on that ball, but Joe, he still was able to go out and retrieve the ball and get his man. Now he is experiencing the pain. Buddy Bell and the Tigers trainer out to he was going to be okay here. Gore looking at him right on the shin.
Yes. Well, the ball is hit sharply, and it gets him crisply right on the shin. Looks like his right shin. Picks it up, and you see he didn't want to put any weight on his right foot to throw it, so he just threw it underhand and fell down. Watch him. He raised his right leg up and just flips it underhand. Nice play there by Gore.
Trainer Russ Miller out to have a look as you see it again. A real close play at first. It looked to me like Dave Martinez hurt himself. Herm Schneider, the White Sox trainer, while we've been watching Gore being attended to, Herm Schneider's been out there with Dave Martinez.
And Martinez is limping.
Looks like he's going to leave the game. We see it hit Gore again. Watch Martinez now. See the close play at first base. And Gore hitting the deck. But after crossing the bag, Dave Martinez started limping. He might have turned his ankle when he hit the bag there at an odd angle. So he's down in the dugout. A lot of casualties on that play. Well, Joe, as we again take a look here, we've seen it hit Gore. Now look at Martinez and watch him hit the bag here.
I think it just probably looked like he pulled a groin running the ball out. I don't know if it happened when he hit the bag, but he slowed up after he went past the bag. Looked like he may have hurt his groin a little bit.
So pulled muscle rather than an ankle strain or sprain or whatever. Well, meanwhile, Gore is...
Seems like he's going to go back out there, John. He's putting his sock back on. He's going to go try it anyway.
Well, I like this toughness.
Well,
I'd like to see if he can just walk.
That's what I say. You have to make sure you can walk, John, before you try to pitch. And remember, Frank Thomas is the hitter.
Give me the damn ball. I'm in there.
You don't want Frank Thomas up there if you're not 100%.
Yeah. Well, maybe he's forgotten that Frank is coming up here for the moment. Coming up now, Wednesday night baseball. Jim Edmonds, J.T. Snow, Chili Davis, Tim Salmon. The Angels are at Baltimore. Roberto Alomar leads the league in hitting. Hit a 3-run homer for Baltimore today in their win. Cal Ripken, the Orioles, Bobby Bonilla and company, and the Angels Wednesday night. Then the second half of the doubleheader. Todd Huntley hit 2 homers yesterday for the Mets, 1 from each side of the plate. Raul Mondesi and the suddenly surging Dodgers the second half of the doubleheader. And Hideo Nomo will be the Dodgers pitcher scheduled in that Wednesday game. Nomo has been almost untouchable at Dodger Stadium this year. He's been human on the road, but in L.A., forget about it.
You know what? I think I'll go down and watch that game in L.A.
Well, you better get your tickets early, man.
Well, I think I can get one. I'm gonna go down Wednesday and watch.
They had 54,000 at Dodger Stadium Friday with him pitching. Well, here's Gore to Frank Thomas. I like Gore's attitude. Dave Martinez out at first on the close play. I like how Gore completed that play and then fell over. I mean, you get hit in the shin like that.
Well, he's smart, John. First of all, I mean, you'd rather make sure that you're facing Frank Thomas with the bases empty, you know, rather than keel over out there.
Left field. And caught by Chad Curtis. That one started to sail on him in the wind, but he grabbed it. It'll be Fryman and then Fielder. 5-1, Chicago. Taking it off for the Tigers, and Wilson Alvarez blows a fastball past him. Fryman hit into a double play his first time. Fryman, the Tigers' RBI leader, with 31. And that's off the outside. He'll be followed by Cecil Fielder and then Mel Nieves. So some power coming up for Detroit here. Fryman 10 homers, Fielder with 12. Popped up. He changed up on it. Ventura. And that's out number 1. Kind of tough. He throws 93 miles an hour, and then he throws a changeup.
Right.
1 down. Here is Cecil Fielder coming up.
It may seem strange because we've seen that Gore doesn't have a winning record. He hasn't pitched that well. But there's only a subtle difference between Alvarez and Gore. I I mean, it's subtle. I mean, it's not as big a difference as people might think looking at their records.
Here's power versus power. Slider, ball one. Well, we've seen Gore get around 91 miles an hour with his fastball. Alvarez has been between 91 and 93.
Right. They both have a good breaking ball, and they both will throw a changeup. The difference is Alvarez knows how to set up a hitter and how to finish him off. Gore has proven to me that he knows how to set the hitter up, but he has not been able to finish him off. And I think that's the difference. As you said, Alvarez was able to get out of trouble in the first inning.
Well, 2 breaking balls to fielder. Now he throws the heat.
Exactly. He throws the opposite of what the hitter's looking for, whereas with Gore, you can kind of figure him out if you really watch closely.
So now if you're Cecil, what is he going to throw you?
Exactly. You don't know because he has confidence in both pitches, or all 3, fastball, curveball, and a change.
He just got Fryman out with that changeup. 1 and 2. He struck him out. Good fastball away. 94 miles an hour. That's the hardest one we've seen him throw tonight on the Judge guy.
Well, I mean, again, it's all about knowing what you're doing standing out there on the mound. Alvarez knows that Fielder saw him get Fryman out with a changeup, and he just pours a fastball right over the outside corner. I mean, that's just smart pitching. I mean, he knows what he's doing out there. And I'm sure Gore will learn. I mean, it's something you have to learn by pitching in the major leagues. You don't learn that by pitching in the minor leagues.
Here's Nieves. There's that same pitch. Fastball on the outside, up a little bit. But taken by Nieves. I mean, you can take it when it's the first pitch, but when it's two strikes.
With 2 strikes. That's the difference. That's what we were talking about with Gore. We saw him when he got a hit in the first couple innings, he was able to get people out.
And that slider, a check swing. Karkovice appealing to Cheetah, but Cheetah doesn't even dignify that appeal, Joe, with a single.
And let's take this a step further. Don't forget that Ron Karkovice is very good at handling all of his pitchers on this pitching staff as well.
Veteran catcher. And he's handled some very fine pitches.
Right.
Jack McDowell was probably the premier pitcher in the league there for a while with the White Sox. 3-0. Karkovice came up under Carlton Fisk, who is a master at handling a staff and calling a game. 3-1 the count. Karkovice also has one of the great arms of any catchers in the American League. That is too low, and Nieves gets a walk, the 3rd walk allowed by Alvarez. 2 down with Eddie Williams coming up tomorrow night at 7:30 Eastern. It's the Florida Panthers and the Pittsburgh Penguins in Game 2 of the NHL Eastern Conference Finals. The Panthers took a 1-game-to-none lead yesterday. Then on Tuesday at 7:30 Eastern, it's Colorado and Detroit in Game 2 of the Western Conference Final. Kind of a shock today. The Avalanche won Game 1 here in Detroit, 3-2 in overtime. It's tomorrow and Tuesday night, 7:30 Eastern on ESPN. Ball 1 to Eddie Williams. It's going to take a while for the fans here in Detroit to recover from that.
Yes.
The Red Wings had the best record in the history of the NHL in the regular season. That's a ball up and away to Eddie Williams. 2-0. Williams struck out his first time. The 2 cities right now that lead the NHL playoff series, Denver and Miami. Just as you predicted, Joe. 2-1 the count. If they can just keep the ice frozen there in Miami through the rest of the playoffs. Man, don't let that refrigeration system fail now. Eddie Williams with a 2-1 count. Fastball. 2-2. That was 93 miles per hour. Wilson Alvarez. I mean, he's got the kind of stuff that if everything's working, I mean, he can go and throw a no-hitter. He has thrown one.
I was watching on television. He threw it on TV. I was watching.
In fact, we were in Chicago for a game at Wrigley Field, and he threw it in Baltimore. And there's another strikeout. That's 4 for Alvarez. We're going to the 5th inning. Harold Baines coming up. 5-1 Chicago. Is the right word. I mean, the Tigers have been horrendous, 12-32, and their pitching has been unbelievably bad. Here is Harold Baines. He knows about that. He's had 8 RBIs in the first 2 games of this series. Well, now he's got 9. He got a bases-loaded walk in the 3rd inning of tonight's game. 9 RBIs in the series. And a base hit. Harold Baines, he's a hit machine, this guy.
He is a very good hitter. And again, he's a very smart hitter, John. And I think Frank Thomas does not get credit for how smart he is as a hitter. These two guys, I mean, they know so much about hitting and how to control the strike zone. Both of these hitters know exactly what they're doing at all times.
Here's Frank. We talked about Tony Phillips. I mean, when you hit behind Tony Phillips, you're going to get some RBIs because he's on base all the time.
Right.
But also, if you hit behind Frank Thomas, you get some RBIs, as Baines is discovering. 2 years ago, remember, Julio Franco came over. He'd never been a big RBI man. Great hitter, but not a big RBI man. He hit behind Thomas. He had 98 RBIs in 2/3 of a season. Now Baines is among the league leaders in RBIs with 37. This is only the White Sox 42nd game, and he's got 37 RBIs already. Well, John, Frank Thomas is on base all the time.
All the time. But if there's one difference that I see in the good hitters that are playing today, the sluggers, and some of the passers. In the past, a guy like Albert Bell, he's also a very smart hitter. He makes adjustments at the plate, and he controls the strike zone. I think hitters today control the strike zone maybe a little better than ever before, and I think the pitchers give them that opportunity by the way that they approach the hitters. They're not pitching enough inside, I don't believe, and keeping them honest. But these guys are very smart hitters.
Well, Buddy Bell's out at the mound. We've got Robin Ventura, who hit a grand slam to break this game open in the 3rd inning at the plate. And Jose Lima is warming up in the bullpen. And it looks like Bell is stalling for time out here. And we'll see. College baseball fans turn to ESPN tomorrow at 3 Eastern, noon Pacific, for the road to Omaha. They'll have all the seedings and brackets for the upcoming regional championships that will determine this year's College World Series participants. That's the road to Omaha tomorrow at 3 Eastern on ESPN. Well, Bell was stalling for time to get Lima ready. He does not want Gore to face that man, Robin Ventura, again. Lima coming in. We'll be back. Throws him out as Baines takes second. So Ventura hitting the first pitch thrown from Jose Lima. Baines to second with 1 out now. And the batter will be Danny Tartable. 5-1. Chicago is leading here as Lima comes on. Up from the minor leagues, he's made 4 starts and not very successfully, as you can see, an 8-point-plus earned run average. Now he's out of the bullpen. They've got a day off tomorrow when he would ordinarily be due up. So with the bullpen rather beleaguered right now, chewed up, you know, in need of a rest, Lima comes out of the rotation to make an appearance in long relief here. And relief is what the Tigers bullpen needs at this point. Danny Tartable, the hitter, 0-2. And he takes a called strike. Jose Lima, 21 in the 3rd innings, 32 hits allowed, given up 5 home runs already. I mean, the Tigers, let's face it, the team earned run average is 7.20. Unbelievable. Base hit. Baines is not very fast. Baines had about 11 knee surgeries over the years. I think he has no more cartilage in those knees, Joe. I think it's just all tape and some Elmer's glue or something in there.
Well, he threw a couple of breaking balls for strikes, and then he tried to jam him with a fastball, and Danny Tartable ripped it in the left field for a base hit. John, I want to make a point. I think they did the right thing by taking Gore out of the ball game, because you do not want his leg to be hurting and he alter his delivery and maybe hurt his arm, because he does have a chance to be a good pitcher, I believe.
A guy that they'd like to see make progress and maybe be around to help him in the next few years. Here is Karkovice. He has grounded out twice. That was against Gore. Karkovice has hit some home runs in the past. He's not hitting many of those right now. 0-2 the count. He has only 2 home runs this year. His average is low. But that's a problem spot for the White Sox right now. The 2 catchers, Karkovice and Kruder, have hit only 2 home runs between them, and a combined batting average of right around 200. Let's see if they get 2 here. Fryman, the second one. Lewis back to first. 2. Double play, the side retired. Mark Lewis will be coming up when we get back. 5-1 White Sox here in Detroit. The ESPN Sunday Night Baseball Game of the Week is brought to you by Allied Signals Fram Filters. You can pay a little now or a lot later. And Sunday Night Baseball continues now. Last of the 5th inning, Mark Lewis taking a called strike from Wilson Alvarez, who is really on top of things now. He's given up only 1 hit. He's got a nice lead here, and he's throwing his breaking ball, changeup ball, and throwing it for strikes almost at will.
And he is, like you say, he's on top of his game. But remember, he was in trouble, but he got out of trouble that 1 inning, and he's pitched well since. And if you look at Gord, he really only had that 1 bad inning, but that's enough to lose the ball game, and that's what separates you from being one of the top pitchers.
Broken bat. Ian in the dirt, and Thomas picks it for the out. Thomas saved Ian an error there.
Well, that's another example, John, of what you're talking about, Alvarez being on top of his game. Pitch away, now he comes inside, breaks the bat in Mark Lewis's hand. Lewis has to stay there. You see Alvarez getting out of there. Now here's Guillen. He just doesn't get enough on the throw, but a nice play by Frank Thomas. That wasn't an easy pickup. You know, that was pretty difficult when that ball is out in front where it takes a pretty big hop. It's tough to time it.
So now here is John Flaherty. Off to the right.
Well, I guess it helps if you're 6'7" or something and you stretch halfway across the infield.
By the way, Darren Lewis did come into the ball game in the last inning. He came on replacing Dave Martinez. Martinez, we understand, left with a strained right hamstring. His availability will be evaluated day to day. 1 ball, 1 strike to Flaherty. He grounded out to short his first time. So Martinez, as you surmised, Joe, did pull a muscle, or in this case, a strained muscle. That is Ventura throwing out Flaherty. 2 down. We get an update now. Here's Bill Pito.
All right, John, we take you out to 3Com Park. Giants and the Mets, 2 outs in the top of the 9th. Carl Everett will fly out to Barry Bonds to end it. The Giants win 6-2 to sweep the doubleheader. Mark Gardner, his 2nd complete game of the year, a 6-hitter. John, he struck out 10.
So a great day for the Giants as they sweep a pair. The Giants now 22-20 in the National League West. The Padres also won, though. The Giants are 4 games out in that one. But that's a big day for the Giants out there. They had not played well at home this year. Here is Kimera Barty. He was out on a bunt try his first time. 1 ball, 1 strike to count. 2 down, nobody on. White Sox leading back to Wilson Alvarez, 5-1. Robin Ventura's 3rd inning grand slam, the big hit. Here's Ventura, can't get it. Barty gets the base hit. His 5th hit of the year in his 23rd at bat. Only the 2nd hit of the game for Detroit.
This is the 2nd inning in a row as we see Barty hit this curveball in the hole. Nice try there by Ventura. But Alvarez has gotten the first 2 hitters out in 3 of the 4 innings, and then given up either a walk or a base hit. He's maybe loses his concentration a little bit, but he always gets the first 2 hitters out.
Well, here's a guy who could hurt him if he loses his concentration. Chad Curtis. He's got a little pop. He could hit a home run. There's Darren Lewis, and just like that, the inning has ended. 1 hit, 1 left. After 5 innings, White Sox 5, Tigers 1 from Detroit. Detroit.
John, I said earlier in this ball game that selection of pitches was very important, and I'll show you why. Well, this is the first pitch of Frank Thomas. That opens up the outside part of the plate. That's where he should have gone, out here. But he tries to go out there. He misses. He misses again. Now he has no place to go. Fastball in the middle of the plate. Frank Thomas gets a base hit. He had Frank set up like he did in the 1st inning, and he just made 2 poor pitches.
And a big at bat that loaded the bases as Ray Durham swings and misses against Jose Lima. Durham is 1 for 2 in the game. He'll be followed by Guillen and then Tony Phillips here in the 6th. But he had Thomas 0-2. Threw a great fastball right in on Thomas. And then just threw kind of 2-0 pitches that didn't help. help him.
Yeah, I mean, you open up the outside corner, but it doesn't do you any good to open it up if you don't use it properly.
So then it becomes execution.
And that's why I said there's only a subtle difference between he and Alvarez. And most people would think, you know, there's a big difference, but it's not that big a difference if he makes the pitches he's supposed to make at the proper time.
High pop-up. Fielder drifting back. Mark Lewis is out there. The wind carries it over his head. And Nieves was right behind him, and maybe Nieves should have been a bit more aggressive on that one, Joe.
Well, first of all, you would think that this is not the White Sox park. You would think that they played here more than Detroit because they have not messed up any pop-ups, whereas we've seen 2 mistakes made on pop-ups. Now, you see Mark Lewis going out. Now, you're right. Now, Nieves is just kind of casually coming in because he thinks that Mark Lewis is under it. Now, Mark Lewis knows that he can't make the catch, so he stops. See, Mark Lewis is under it, he thinks, but he continues to go out. Now he realizes that he can't catch it, and it drops in front of Nieves.
I mean, is it a good rule of thumb if you're an outfielder, just keep coming and call him off if you think you can catch it?
Outfielder's supposed to catch the ball if he can, unless the infielder is standing there camped under the pit ball. That was our first scare. That was our first scare. We're so close here at Tiger Stadium. Foul balls that go straight back have a chance of coming in our booth.
Are you all right?
Yes, I'm okay.
Yeah, there we are, just behind the umpire, really. I mean, it looks real far away, really, but on that picture.
But it's close.
There we are up there, just where it says ESPN. By the way, we carry that sign around with us wherever we go. It's always kind of funny when we're in the hotel and we put it out, you know, in front of our room out in the hallway there.
Did you hang it today?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They always come by me and says, do you know Joe Morgan personally? 1 ball, 1 strike to Ozzie Guillen here. Runner at second. They scored that a double, by the way. Off the glove of Lima, base hit into center field. Here comes Durham, who runs real well. And look at that throw into the middle of the diamond, and Fielder could not cut it off. Barty's supposed to hit Cecil with that throw. And instead, Lima, who was not backing up home plate, ended up cutting the ball off. 6-1 Detroit.
Well, again, takes this fastball, hits it right back through the middle. Lima gets his glove on it, but he can't slow it down. Watch, he hits off of his glove, goes on into center field for a base hit.
Got Tony Phillips. 6-1 Chicago. Phillips up. He's 1 for 3. And that's ball 1. That's 10 hits for the White Sox now. Phillips started that 5-run 3rd inning rally with a single. He has scored 30 runs this year. Right center field into the alleyway. Barty can't get it. Guillen is being waved home. Nieves backed up. He couldn't get it either. Guillen has scored, and Phillips to 3rd, and it is 7-1. And further misadventures of the Tigers outfield as Barty played, I think, a single into a triple there. I'm interested to hear your analysis, though. I mean, I've analyzed it, but I will defer to you.
Well, as I said earlier, defensively, the Tigers have made their pitching staff look worse than it really is. Good hitting there by Phillips. He finds the gap. Barty tries to cut it off. He can't. There you see Nieves. He tries to barehand it for some reason instead of catching it with his glove, and he kicks it around a little bit out there. Here you see Guillen rounding 3rd. They send him home. Phillips rounds 2nd, and he goes into 3rd base easily.
Now pitch in the dirt to Darren Lewis, who's up for the first time. He's hitting .220, a home run at 11 batted in. The infield is in. 2 runs have scored. 7-1 Chicago. Ryman holds Phillips at 3rd and throws out Lewis for the first out of the inning. And Frank Thomas is coming up. Now, if Barty angled over and gave up that ball as a single,
Right.
he fields the hop, and you got 2 men on, and nobody's scored yet.
Right, but you also have a place to put Frank Thomas. You'd have runners at 2nd and 3rd probably, or, you know, you could put Frank at 1st base easily. But this is what's
hits the ball harder than Frank Thomas. There you see how they're playing. In all the way around. Thomas in this game is walked, single to left and flied out deep to left center. Flaherty comes back, but it is onto the rooftop. 1 strike to Frank Thomas. Bell got 2 RBIs today in Cleveland's win. Mo Vaughn got 3 RBIs in Boston's win. So each of them have 45 runs batted in for the year, and Frank Thomas has 44. Those are the 3 at the top of the American League. Jay Buhner hit 2 home runs today for Seattle. Joe Carter. Joe Carter's back. An off year last year. Fastball is inside. 2-1 to Thomas. You know who else is back? Frank Viola.
Sweet music. I saw him win he won a game.
He won a game last night. First time in a couple of years. And we understand he's throwing the ball hard. High in the air to right field. I mean, about 8 miles high. Nieves has it, and Phillips will score easily on the play. 8-1. Frank Thomas with his 45th RBI of the year. And that's a Tony Phillips special. That's why you get a lot of RBIs heading behind Tony Phillips. He's always out there somewhere.
Well, Frank was making sure that he got the ball in there. And watch, it's a breaking ball. See how he gets under it? He's hitting it. He's trying to hit it into the seats in right field. But he wants to make sure, first and foremost, that he gets the ball in the air, gets it out of the infield. He wants to pick that run batted in up, and he does so.
Well, here's Harold Baines, who's also among the league leaders in RBIs. And it's ball 1 to Harold. He is 1 for 2 with a walk. His walk came with the bases loaded. He's got 37 runs batted in for the year. Called a strike to the outside. 1 ball, 1 strike. 8 runs, 11 hits for the White Sox. 1 run and 2 hits and 1 error for Detroit, although further misadventures in the outfield in this inning. And that's outside ball 2. Good one.
There's a term that a lot of players use, and they call it, you know, he's a professional hitter. That fits Harold Baines probably better than anyone that I know.
That's a drive in the right center field, way back there. Barchi going back off the wall, and it ricochets into center. Baines limping into second, and he'll hold there with a double. A triple for most hitters, but Baines just cannot run that well. He's strictly a designated hitter.
Fastball away. Baines goes out and gets it and drives it in the right center field. And it hits off the wall. Just misses being a home run. Right there, about 2 feet below the yellow mark.
When you see that, that was out near that 415 marker in right center. He hit it out in that part of this ballpark. It is very deep. It's 440 feet to straightaway center. Robin Ventura. And we mentioned a couple of times the wind is blowing out tonight with gusto, 20 to 25 miles an hour. And it seems like every ball has been hit in the air tonight has really taken off. Ventura hit his to the left of straightaway center for a grand slam earlier. 1-2 the count. Ventura back in the 3rd. Bases loaded, a 1-1 game, and he launched one out of here.
There you see a changeup he throws, and Ventura's way out in front after a good fastball on the inside part of the plate.
Robin Ventura now 7 homers, 22 batted in for the year. Follows the changeup with a fastball, and I didn't think Ventura was very surprised.
One thing that happens, John, to good hitters, if you get 2 strikes on that, you may catch them looking for a pitch, 0-1 or in a situation. But once they get 2 strikes, they go back to the fundamentals of hitting, and that is see the ball, attack the ball. So you're not going to throw fastballs by good hitters very often with 2 strikes. You have a better chance with 1 strike. When they get 2 strikes, they zero in on seeing the ball as quickly as possible and hitting the fastball and adjusting to the breaking ball. I remember Frank Robinson said something to me a long time ago. He said, you look for the fastball all the time and adjust to the breaking ball. And all good hitters do that, especially with 2 strikes.
Off to the right, but Harold Baines is not going anywhere. Flaherty retrieves it. 2-2 the count. You know, a guy who was a great hitter said that every pitch, that's the way he
right.
thought of it.
Well, you
Al
should.
Oliver.
Well, you should. I mean, theoretically, every pitch in your mind should be a fastball because you can adjust to the breaking ball. You can't look for a changeup and still hit a fastball unless you have a very quick bat.
Look out, Ron Jackson. Man, Ron, he's still moving like a young guy, isn't he? Hit the deck, Ron.
This is a changeup, and Ventura gets out in front
Heads
of
up.
it. Jackson
Incoming.
He wasn't down in his crouch. He wasn't ready for that pitch.
Last thing he was thinking of right there. 2-2 the count to Ventura. And he changed up and struck him out. That's the inning. But 3 more runs for the White Sox. Trammell, Fryman, and Fielder coming up for Detroit. But they got a long way to go now. 8-1 Chicago. 8-1 the White Sox ahead. Alvarez with the fastball, a strike. Trammell has one of only 2 Tigers hits in this game. A single in the first, and he popped a short in the third. That's headed for left field, but again, the throw, swing, but just barely. Wow.
It was a nice play by Guillen. The tough part of it was getting rid of the ball. I mean, he caught it deep on the outfield grass, but watch how quickly he gets rid of the ball. Because he has no chance to stop his momentum, straighten up, and fire. So he just takes one step, gets rid of it. He has to put a little air under it to get it there, so he can't get it there quite in time. He couldn't quite get it on the line. Watch how he has to throw this pretty high. Nice play, but see, he throws it up to make sure he gets enough of it to get to first base, and in doing so, he loses the runner.
You reminded me of Joe Montana making that throw.
Yes, that looked like a Joe Montana off your back foot.
Caught the tight end for about a 20-yard gain. Frank Thomas making a pretty good tight end, wouldn't he?
Yeah, he was one, wasn't he?
Well, that's right. At Auburn.
Yeah, at Auburn with Bo Jackson.
Outside for a ball to Travis Fryman, 2-0. Travis has hit into a double play and fouled out to third. The big hurt, Frank Thomas. You know, guys, I mean, he was not that highly rated coming out of college.
Right.
When he did not get drafted out of high school, he was crushed. And when he didn't get drafted by any baseball teams. And even as an intercollegiate player, he's not as highly thought of as you would expect, knowing now what we know. But Thomas has proceeded to show us all. 3-0 the count. And in fact, you'll be able to hear Frank's thoughts on a lot of things on Sports Center after the ball game. He is the Sunday night conversation that will be with Frank Thomas after our telecast here tonight. And he's a very enjoyable guy to hear talk. He has very pronounced opinions on a lot of subjects. Sometimes he gets himself into trouble.
Yeah, but he's entitled to his opinion.
As George Will has said many times, if you didn't have something important to say, you would never get into trouble. I mean, it's the people who have important things to say that get into trouble. Here is Cecil Fielder.
And this is the first time that he's had to face Fielder when it means something.
Cecil with a chance to put him back within striking distance here. And he starts with that breaking ball. I think he started with that breaking ball every time tonight.
Well, in the past, the first couple of bats, he was able to throw any pitch he wanted because if he walked him, he really didn't care. Now he has to try to make sure he gets him out. And I think this is a key at bat for Fielder if he's going to get this ball put back into this game. But unfortunately, when we talk about Fielder in these situations, we think of him having to hit a home run, and I think that's part of his problem lately. He feels like in these situations he has to hit 3-run homers, and that's why his batting average has suffered so much.
I mean, if it's 1-1,
right,
a single does the trick, but it's 8-1. Fastball inside again, and it is 2-1 to Fielder. Although, I mean, you see Fielder in this park, and you immediately look out to the upper deck in left field.
Yeah.
Cecil averaged 43 homers a year his first 3. He's the guy who hit 51 home runs here in 1990. Good pitch in the outside. 2-2.
Well, you see the difference in the way Alvarez is working Fielder as compared to Thomas. He was inside with a fastball. Now he goes away. See, he's in and out. That keeps the hitter off balance. He's thrown 2 pitches inside this at bat and 2 away. I mean, that's perfect pitching. 2
men on, nobody out. There's that high hard one on the inside. 2.
Now, if he follows a pattern, he'll go away. And I don't think he really believes that he wants to get Fielder out inside. He's hoping that he'll chase that pitch inside. But with 3 and 2, he has to go back away.
And a risky, you go inside here. He goes away, and it's a pop-up foul. Takavai starts over, but it hits the rooftop.
But again, that just shows how smart Alvarez is, and and how he and Karkovic work so well together. They go in. They don't even mind going to 3 and 2 to set Fielder up. They set him up with a fastball off the plate inside, and they went away with a changeup. 3 and 2.
3 and 2. Trammell at second, Fryman at first. Fielder has hit 12 home runs this year. There's a home run. Way back. Up against the wall and over the wall. An automatic double.
That cost the Tigers a run.
Trammell will score, but the other runner, Fryman, will have to go back to third. Cecil Fielder out to the left of that 4:15 marker out there. A home run in most ballparks.
And he definitely would have had another run batted in if that ball would not have bounced over the fence. As Fryman was going to score easily.
You see the pitch came in. He challenged him, Joe, and Fielder was right on it.
Well, see, I mean, Cecil is a good hitter as well. I mean, he takes this fastball and he hammers it in the right center field. I actually thought the ball was going to go out when he first hit it. But as you mentioned, it's just so deep out there. And you see it bounce over the fence. Comes a ground rule double. 2 bases for everyone.
Mike Pasick, the pitching coach, out to the mound. Meanwhile, as Fielder at second base talks to Ozzie Guillen, and Daniel Bautista, a right-handed hitter, is going to come up as a pinch hitter for Nieves here. And the White Sox bullpen, for the first time tonight, gets busy. Alvarez has allowed 4 hits in the game, including 2 in this inning. 4 walks, 4 strikeouts. But the Tigers have a chance here to cut rather deeply into this lead in the 6th inning. In the bullpen, Matt Karchner. And this Chicago bullpen has been a real strength for Terry Bevington this year. He's put together a very strong bullpen. Here is Daniel Bautista, right-handed hitter. He's got a little pop. Nobody out. Runners at second and third. 1 too low at third base. Fryman, who had walked. And at second base, Cecil Fielder, who hit the booming double. And out there, Tiger Stadium is very large, as you pointed out, Joe. They get him to hit it straight away. You can keep him in the ballpark here, usually. Ball slider high. It's 2-0. Now, Bautista, man, he was thinking this is great in April.
No, he's thinking this is easy, right?
Yeah, but in May, no. He's in a slump, just as is his team. Popped up. Threw it off speed delivery and fooled him. Be careful now. And Karkovic makes the grab. Well, every ball of the year tonight is an adventure, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, that was a very difficult play for Karkovic. I thought Frank Thomas was going to come in and take it, because that was a very difficult play. Change up, he gets Bautista out front. Now Karkovic looks up. Now he goes after it, but I guess you would say, where's Frank? Now he takes a look at Frank and he says, well, he's not here yet. I'll go ahead and make the catch. And you see Frank come in late.
Well, now there's only 1 out here in the 6th inning, and Eddie Williams coming up, but that's going to be all for Wilson Alvarez. So he's getting a quick hook from Terry Bevington. 8-2, the White Sox ahead. Runners at second and third with 1 out, and Karchner is being brought into the game. We'll be back. Second and third, 1 out. A new pitcher for the White Sox, Matt Karchner, and a pinch hitter, Curtis Pride, for Detroit. The infield stays back except for Ventura at third. A hard slider missing down and in from Karchner. Curtis Pride is hitting .233 for the year with a homer and 2 batted in 30 at-bats.
Well, you see Karchner's pitched very, very well. He has a good fastball and the hard slider we just saw there.
White Sox have not had a complete game this year. That's a liner into center. Lewis, did he catch it? No! It's a trap. Coming in to score
Aaron Lewis is a Gold Glove center fielder, and he tries to catch it, but that's a beautiful swing right there. And that ball is sinking. Lewis is coming quickly, and he just can't get there. It hits right under his glove, but he does a great job of smothering it because he cannot let that ball get past him. Good play there by Lewis.
Now Mark Lewis, first and third, outside ball one. The middle infield double play depth for the White Sox. Remember, Mark Lewis having a fine year, a .315 average. Although he is 0 for 2 tonight. He's lined out to second and grounded to short. Could be 2. Ventura to second one. Durham back to first. 2. Double play, and that was a big one. So the Tigers' bid for a big inning evaporates. They get 2. We head to the 7th. 8-3 White Sox. John Miller, Joe Morgan. It is 8-3 White Sox. They got out of that inning, though, with a nice double play.
Well, John, we've talked about the difference in the two ball clubs defensively. We've seen this twice in this ball game to break up rallies. Now, watch Ventura. Takes the ball one step only. Now, look at this, a perfect throw. Right there, chest high for Durham. Comes across and makes the double play. Both times he's given Durham a perfect throw. The double play always starts with that first throw.
Tarnable with a swinging strike, 0-1. Tarnable 1 for 3. They got out of a possible big inning in the first inning when they got Fryman to hit that 5-4-3 double play. Jose Lima misses. 1 ball, 1 strike. There's Daniel Bautista staying in the ball game to play right field after he hit for Nieves. 1-2. And of course, when you pinch hit for a designated hitter, you don't have to really decide about who's going to play defense. He just remains the DH until the next time, and then you can decide if you want him to still hit or not. 2-2 the count to Tarnable. Now, Tarnable can find his old stroke, and it's been a couple of years now since he really was productive. And the White Sox will truly have a lineup capable of being explosive. And of course, they play in a division with the most explosive team around, the Cleveland Indians.
Well, what he will give them is a right-handed bat to back up Frank Thomas. Right now, you have Harold Baines behind him.
Right field, Bautista, late break, and he's got it. That's out number 1. Next Sunday on the game of the week, it's the Yankees and the Mariners, and Dwight Gooden is scheduled to pitch. That's something, a no-hitter, and we'll see Dwight Gooden. He's scheduled to pitch next Sunday night against Ken Griffey and the Mariners from the Kingdom, where the Mariners won that amazing divisional championship series last October on the 2-run double by Edgar Martinez against Jack McDowell, who now is with Cleveland. That ended up in extra innings with Jack McDowell versus Randy Johnson out of the bullpens of those two ball clubs.
2 of the best pitchers in the last 15 years in the American League.
And how could you have a more exciting finish than a team down by a run, and with 2 men on, Edgar Martinez, the double into the corner. Ken Griffey went through Sam Perlazzo's stop sign and scored the winning run. Karkovice pops it up. He makes the grab. Karkovice is 0 for 4 now. 2 men down. You know, Dwight Gooden not only pitched the no-hitter last week, he also had 7 no-hit innings in his previous start. I don't buy this 1/3 of an inning because he'd given up a couple of hits in that inning before he got the final out. But whichever way you put it, it's a lot of no-hit innings in a row.
You're right.
And look at that. 199 batting average against him, including his first 3 starts when he got hit hard and got taken out of the rotation for a start. The only reason he came back in when he did was because David Cone had the problems. And we send all of our best wishes, by the way, to David Cone, who had some surgery, a small aneurysm, a real frightening thing with the problems he was having with the feeling in his fingers and his arm. He listened to the final parts of that no-hitter on the radio in the hospital. Off the glove of Lima, he slowed it up enough that Durham is going to have a base hit. His 3rd consecutive hit.
And we saw that Durham had been swinging the bat very, very well. coming into tonight's ball game, he had 3 more base hits to it.
He's
had 3 hits yesterday.
He's hitting .316 coming into the game tonight.
Well, the ball is hit up the middle. You see the second baseman, Mark Lewis, starts up the middle. He has to reverse his field, and by the time he gets to it, no play because Durham runs well.
Here's Ozzie Guillen. Ozzie delivered a run with a single in the 6th. He is 1 for 3. 2 down, runner at first. But you know, one of the real poignant moments of that no-hitter and the aftermath of same was an interview with David Cohn where he talked about his teammate Dwight Gooden and almost came to tears. The emotion was there because everybody likes Dwight Gooden, and everybody roots for Dwight Gooden, not just his teammates. And that's, I think, what made all of it such a great story the other night, to see him do what he did.
Well, you got to remember, too, Ken Griffey Jr. went over during the press conference and put his arms around Dwight and hugged him, and, you know, made statements about how good he was pitching and how proud he was of him. And I think, as you said, Dwight Gooden is truly one of the good guys. I mean, he's had some problems away from the field, but he is truly one of the people that most players really enjoy being around and like to talk about.
Joe Girardi, his catcher, said, you know, you have to root for him. He's such a great guy. He says when I played against him, he was so intimidating out there. He said, I was surprised when I got here and found out what a great guy he was. Boom! That's a ball. 1 ball and 2 strikes. Now Flaherty goes out to talk to Lima. We're in the 7th inning. The White Sox ahead 8-3 over the Tigers here, with 2 down and a runner at first. Well, Gooden is going to work on Tuesday night, and then he would be due up next Sunday on Sunday Night Baseball. Also next Sunday at 2 Eastern, 11 Pacific, it's the inaugural U.S. 500 from Brooklyn, Michigan. IndyCar points leader Jimmy Vasser will be on the pole, leading a field that includes Al Unser Jr. and Michael Andretti. The U.S. 500 next Sunday at 2 Eastern on ESPN. And that's a ball. 2-2 the count. 8 runs and 13 hits for the White Sox. This is a day after they put 21 hits on the board yesterday. 2-2 to Guillen. Hot fly, shallow left center. And Marty, the center fielder. 1 hit, 1 left. We go to the last of the 7th. Flaherty, Barty, and Chad Curtis coming up. 8-3, Chicago. ESPN Sunday Night Baseball. Ron Karkovice, the catcher, taking the pitch inside from his pitcher, Matt Karchner. The batter is John Flaherty. He hits a high fly ball into left center field. Darren Lewis. And there is 1 away. Robin Ventura, we saw his grand slam swing. That's still the big hit of the day. Back in the 3rd inning, breaking a 1-1 tie, and he launched one out of here. The grand slam, making it a 5-1 game for the White Sox. Now it is 8-3. Kimera Barty, the hitter, against reliever Matt Karchner. Karchner, 28 years old, from Bloomsburg State University. And that's ball 1 outside, and kind of a late bloomer. He finally made it to the big leagues last year and had great success second half of the season with the White Sox, and is doing it again this year so far. That's a foul out of play. 1-1 to Barty, who is 1 for 2 in this game. 8-3 Chicago. 8 runs on the board against this Tiger pitching staff. That's 35 runs allowed in this weekend series by the Tigers. 1-2 the count. One ball and 2 strikes the count to Barty. Chad Curtis, the leadoff man, is on deck. Tigers with a team ERA over 7. Woo! And he struck him out. 2 men down. And Chad Curtis will come up. No team in the history of Major League Baseball has finished with an ERA over 7. The worst one of all time, the 1930 Philadelphia Phillies with an ERA of 6.71. The old St. Louis Browns at 36 were next. And the 29 Phillies were pretty bad as well. The Tigers right now at the moment, 7.25 ERA. We don't know where they're finished, but we know that it's right now historically bad. And, I mean, we're talking a This is the 45th game of the year for the Tigers, and the ERA is over 7. 2-0 to Curtis, who is he's 0 for 1 with 2 walks, hitting leadoff. At 1930 Philadelphia Phillies ball club, Joe. Now there was some bad pitching. They gave up more runs than any team in history, as you would expect. They also had a pretty bad defense. They gave up 175 unearned runs that year.
Well, I'm being honest with you. I think bad defense goes hand in hand with a pitching staff that has the higher earned run averages. I know an earned run is supposed to be a free and clear run. But to be honest with you, bad defense, if we saw Papa drop in out here, wasn't scored a hit, I mean there, so it becomes a base hit, and that counts on the earned run average. So I think a bad defense usually contributes a lot to a pitcher's ERA.
3-2 the count now. On the other hand, when you have real bad pitching, sometimes the defense gets worse, right? There's always base runners on, and
that's
a lot of pressure is put on the defense.
And also, you got a lot of pitchers who stand out there when they get runners on, and the defense has a tendency to get on his heels. I think they go hand in hand.
Popped up, shallow right. Durham. And Tarnable content to let him take it, and he did. We go to the 8th inning. Tony Phillips. Frank Thomas coming up third, 8-3 Chicago.
5, Edwin Hurtado against Roberto Alomar. We got 2 on. It's the 2-1 pitch, and it's gone. A 3-run home run. Alomar's 5th homer of the year, and the O's beat Seattle by the final of 8-7. John, back to you.
Okay, Bill, thank you. The Orioles take 2 out of 3 from the Mariners this weekend. The Orioles have won 7 of their last 9. They're a game and a half back to the Yankees, who got beaten by the Angels today. We'll see the Orioles the first half of our Wednesday night doubleheader on ESPN, facing the Angels. Wednesday, 7:30 Eastern. Tony Phillips, the hitter, against Jose Lima. Did he swing? No, says John Chulop. 1 ball, 1 strike. Phillips has a single and a triple. 2 runs scored and 1 run batted in. Phillips has scored 31 runs this year, and he's also driven in 27. 1-1 the count. High in the air. Out goes Trammell. Barty will take charge. And there is 1 away. The Tigers, the worst pitching staff. Is it the worst ever? I mean, so far they're in the running for that designation. We talked to Randy Smith, the Tigers general manager, about the state of the Tigers staff. Are there any prospects that he sees in this current staff?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think our pitching staff right now, there are some guys that we have hopes for. They need to turn the corner and get a little bit better. And I mean, the only way to find out is we give them the ball, and hopefully they do. I look back to San Diego and Andy Ashby. People were very critical of Andy Ashby. You gave him the ball enough times, his stuff came around, and I think there's some guys here with good stuff that just haven't produced yet.
Yeah, we saw one of them tonight, Joe. Greg Gore.
Well, I agree that Gore has good stuff. I haven't seen the rest of the pitching staff in person.
Darren Lewis, the hitter. Trammell. And that's out number 2, and Frank Thomas will be coming up. Well, one thing, there's also a pitchers on the disabled list right now. Omar Olivares. We've seen him in the past with the Cardinals. Good arm.
Right.
And he was not pitching too badly before he got hurt. He's going to pitch tomorrow in their exhibition game against the minor league ball club. See Olivares before he got hurt. This is the current rotation. And nobody doing very well. And a lot of guys doing very poorly in that rotation. Frank Thomas takes a strike on the outside. Thomas, 1 for 2 with a walk and a sacrifice fly. Tied for the league lead in RBIs now with Mo Vaughn and Albert Bell. Sort of in their own separate planet right now, those 3. 1 ball, 1 strike to Frank Thomas. Anyway, they've got this young pitcher, Justin Thompson. Very high on him. Throws real hard. And they've been working him through the minor league system. And he might be here by the end of the month.
Well, I'm sure they're going to bring him up, John, but they wanted him to earn his way here, and they feel like he has now. This is not a situation where they're bringing him up to try to save some face or, a public relations situation. They think that he deserves to be in the big leagues now.
Look out, Frank. 2-2. We're talking about Justin Thompson in the minors. He's 5-2 with a 2.02 earned run average at Toledo. 3 complete games. So he got a great arm. And And again, they didn't want to just have him in here. He could have been here at the beginning of the year. They wanted him to build up his own confidence. And as you say, I think that's the way to put it. To earn his way here.
I tell you what, while all this is going on, Frank's getting a little angry. They're starting to, a couple of pitches have been up around his head and inside, and he's had to get out of the way.
Travis Fryman. What an arm he's got. 3 up and 3 down. We go to the last of the 8th. Trammell, Fryman, and Fielder. Maybe the last chance for the Tigers to draw close. John Miller and Joe Morgan from Tiger Stadium, Detroit. The White Sox 8, the Tigers 3, last of the 8th. The ESPN Sunday Night Baseball Game of the Week. Next Sunday, from the Kingdome in Seattle, the Yanks. And Dwight Gooden is scheduled to go against Ken Griffey, Edgar Martinez, Jay Buhner, and the Mariners from the Kingdome. And Joe, we were there opening night. I mean, that place has been rocking. What a story there in Seattle. Their average crowd this year has been nearly 34,000 per date. The Yanks and the Mariners. Tino Martinez returning to Seattle, where he had such a great year last year. Now he's with the Yanks.
I think something is bothering
Matt Karchner,
because, well, now McClellan says that's okay.
Out comes Herb Schneider, the trainer, along with Terry Bevington. He was late getting out there to start this inning, which I know you thought maybe something was happening in the trainer's room with
I thought something was wrong because it took him so long to get out there.
Well, they're going to change.
Coming out earlier.
Yeah. Brian Kaiser gets the call, and Karchner leaves with something wrong. We'll be back. Sunday Night Baseball. We're going to try again to get this last half of the 8th inning started with Trammell, Fryman, and Fielder coming up against Brian Kaiser. Now, tomorrow night at 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific, it's the Florida Panthers and the Pittsburgh Penguins in Game 2 of the NHL Eastern Conference Finals. The Panthers won Game 1 yesterday, 5-1. Is that right? That's unbelievable. John Van Beesbrook stopped 32 shots. That's the Panthers and Penguins. Really a must-win for the Penguins tomorrow night at 7:30 Eastern on ESPN. The Penguins, an exciting, freewheeling team, Joe, but they're in trouble now. Brian Kaiser on the pitch for the White Sox. He gets as long as he deems necessary to warm up because of the injury to Matt Karchner. We got a moment here, and here's Bill Pito with an update.
All right, here we got the Indians and the Rangers. Albert Bell coming in with a 19-game hitting streak. Bottom 4, 5-2 Cleveland. Bell base hit to left field, scores 2. So Bell now has a 20-game hitting streak. The Indians were up 7-2. They go on to win, John, by the final of 8-5.
All right, Bill, and quite a weekend there in Cleveland. The 2 top teams in the American League up till now, 2 best records. The Rangers and Indians head-to-head for the first time. And Cleveland took 2 out of 3, but they had to come from a 10-5 deficit in the 7th inning Friday to get that first win. Alan Trammell, the hitter. He is 2 for 3 tonight, hitting .277 for the year. Brian Kaiser out of Stanford University. Former teammate of Jack McDowell with a team that won the national title at Stanford in both 1987 and 88. And if you were there on ESPN, you saw that happening.
I was there.
That's what I thought. You know, I've always noticed that during the College World Series, you always have this wistfulness about you. Like, you know, you've never actually said this, but as if to say, you know, I kind of wish I was there. I miss the old days when I used to cover that. Trammell has his 3rd hit of the game. Fryman coming up. Fielder behind him. You know, Joe, listen, I love you. You know I love you, man. But go ahead.
I think I will. You know, I think I will drive up there.
Tune to ESPN a week from Friday, May 31st for the College World Series. 8 of college baseball's premier teams all battling for the national title. The College World Series for the 17th consecutive year on ESPN beginning Friday, May 31st. Here is Fryman, and he looks at a called strike. You know, Terry Francona, the White Sox third base coach. I'm sorry, the Tigers third base coach. He used to be in the White Sox organization as a manager. And he was in that College World Series back in 1980. That's the first year that ESPN covered the College World Series. Alex Fernandez played in that. Robin Ventura, Darren Lewis,
Roger Clemens.
Yeah, but Roger's not here tonight.
Oh, okay.
I'm talking about in the ballpark.
In the ballpark.
And not here at Tiger Stadium tonight. I'm not talking about.
All right. In the ballpark.
In the ballpark. Mike Messina, Ben McDonald.
Oh, they're not in the ballpark.
Oh, I forgot. Camara Barty. He was in the College World Series. Barry Bonds.
Yeah.
Whoops, there I go again.
I know, but that's okay to mention him.
Yeah, well, see, now I'm dropping names now. Travis Fryman with a count of 1-2 strikes. He is hit into a double play, fouled out to third, and walked. Now, if he can get aboard, Cecil Fielder would have a shot here to make it rather interesting. And that's what Kaiser doesn't want. He doesn't want interesting here.
No, good pitch there.
Darren Lewis with the catch. And now Fielder with 1 out and Trammell at second.
Let's take a look at Fielder. We talked about not having to pitch to Fielder in clutch situations. Breaking ball in, everything in, everything in. Now he goes away, stays away. And the last pitch away, Cecil finally goes out there and gets it. But he kept him off balance by throwing a lot of fastballs inside and breaking balls in. And that's really the way they have pitched Frank Thomas tonight. Try to stay in a lot and then go away.
Fielder hit that double to the 415-foot marker. This one is away. Slider missing. Ball 1. Cecil is 1 for 3. Now has 29 RBIs for the year. 12 home runs. Look out. In with a fastball missing. 2-0 now. When Thomas is hit tonight, the man on deck is Harold Baines. Here is Cecil Fielder, but the man on deck is Daniel Bautista. Nothing against Bautista, but he ain't no Harold Baines. And there's ball 3. Why don't they just make it official and just give him the 4th wide one here, Joe?
Yeah. Well, that's the difficulty we were talking earlier. Most of the other teams get to hit against the worst pitching staff in the league, and usually Cecil has to hit against one of the better pitching staffs in the league.
Well, a 4-pitch walk. What a surprise. Now Bautista will come up. 2 men on, 1 man out.
But that's what you wanted him to do now. Remember, you wanted him to take some of those wide pitches and go on to first base.
That's what I told him. I said, Cess, take your 120 walks. Everybody, you'll still hit a lot of homers. And all the stat books will say, man, he's on base all the time. He's really improving. Cecil said, well, yeah, that'd be great. I get 60 RBIs. That's not what they pay me to do, man. I gotta drive some guys in here. That's an interesting concept, though, when you hear about guys. Eddie Murray often talks about it, expanding the strike zone at a certain spot in the game. In other words, you're not up there to walk. You swing at some pitches maybe you ordinarily wouldn't, because your job is to drive those guys in. 0-1 the count to Bautista. 2 men on. He drills it to center. Lewis started in. He makes the catch. Tagging at second. Trammell. And down to third he goes. Well, Darren Lewis, an exceptional center fielder, able to make up for an early misread on that ball.
Well, that's Darren Lewis for you. I mean, he is one of the best center fielders in baseball. He doesn't hit for a high average, but he can run them down. This ball was hit awfully hard and was hit in the toughest play for an outfielder. The ball hit directly over his head, and that ball was hit directly over his head. So he goes back, he makes the catch. Any outfielder will tell you they'd rather have the ball hit off to the side because they can gauge it better.
Here is Curtis Pride now. Interesting player, great all-round athlete. He takes ball 1, but Curtis Pride was born with a severe hearing disability. He is 95% deaf. He never learned sign language. He taught himself to read lips as a youngster. He can converse with you. He speaks very well, and his parents wanted him to be able to do that. And Curtis Pride with that handicap, but he has not let it hold him down. One of the great moments when he hit hit his first Major League home run against a guy who is now his teammate, Richie Lewis of the Marlins, back in 1993. And it broke a 3-3 tie in the 9th inning. But his first base hit was not a homer, but it was even a bigger spot in Montreal. And he delivered a clutch pinch hit in a pennant race to beat the Phillies in 93. And he received a standing ovation and didn't realize it because he couldn't hear him. He was out there at second base, and his third base coach, Jerry Manuel, signaled over to him and said, "Tip your cap." Brian said, "What?" And he said, "Listen, they're giving you an ovation. Tip your cap." And that's the first moment when Pride realized what was happening. And it was obviously a moment that he will never forget. He was born in 1968. His mother, Sally, had the German measles during her pregnancy. It was back at a time when there was an outbreak in the United States of the rubella virus. That is strike 3 called in the inside corner. We were hoping after all that Curtis would nail one here, but it was not to be on this night. 8-3, Chicago. Sunday Night Baseball, 8-3. White Sox as we go to the 9th inning in 3 games here this weekend. The White Sox, 35 runs and 46 hits. Robin Ventura tonight, the big blow. A grand slam back in the 3rd inning. The Tigers with that historically bad team ERA, 7.23. Cecil Fielder tonight got a hold of one. It wasn't just a double. No, it was a booming double to the deepest part of the ballpark. Here's Greg Olson on to pitch now against Harold Baines, and there's a called strike. Greg Olson at one time, one of the great closers in the American League with the Baltimore Orioles, but then arm trouble set in. He's been trying to mount a comeback ever since. He says the arm feels great, and he says he's throwing just like he used to. Got a great curveball when he's right and throws pretty hard. He was a former college teammate of Frank Thomas at Auburn University. And also they had a guy that they knew pretty well named Bo Jackson. Greg Olson, the Otter, facing Harold Baines. Baines tonight, a single, a double, 2 for 3, and a run batted in. Mark Lewis, 1 away here in the 9th. Coming up right after the ball game, Sports Center with Linda Cohen and Dan Patrick. What was I about to say? Dan Patrick. Yeah, he's my favorite. Their top stories tonight. The Magic and Bulls played basketball. The Avalanche and the Red Wings in overtime. But we're kind of whispering that here in Detroit. And a conversation with the big hurt, Frank Thomas. That's on Sports Center. Don't miss it. Here's Robin Ventura. He's only had 1 hit tonight, Joe. However, it was the hit that counted more than any other. A grand slam back in the 3rd inning. The score was 1-1, and he hit it out of here, helped by the wind, no doubt. He hit it to left of straightaway center over the 400-foot marker out there. There's that big hook from Olson, but he misses low. Olson went to spring training with the Cardinals, had a bad spring, and of course they had signed Dennis Eckersley, so he was going to be the closer. Then he hooked on with Cincinnati, went to the minor leagues there, and then the Tigers traded for him. Sharp curve, down and in. Ball 2, 2-1 the count. He says since he's been brought up to the major leagues here with the Tigers, mostly he's been pitching in spots like this. Club way behind, and he just comes in sort of to mop up and get some work in. 2-1 the count. Now, if he could even come close to his former form here, get it back together, they'd have picked up a pretty good find here, because he was real tough to hit with that great curveball.
Well, he was almost unhittable during the stretch there when he was throwing that curveball right over the top.
Robin Ventura, base hit, his 2nd hit. Ventura with a single here, but back in the 3rd inning, it was a 1-1 game with Greg Gore on the mound. The bases were loaded. Look at that. He hung it. 400-foot marker, a grand slam for the former intercollegiate star, Robin Ventura. Here's Charnham. He is 1 for 4 in this game. A guy the White Sox would like to see get going here soon. I think for that matter, Danny would like to see himself get going. He's in the final year of his contract.
Well, actually,
not out of play.
Swung the bat better because he got also a horrible start, and he had a little stretch there where he hit the ball pretty well for about a week, but he still needs to get on top of his game in order to help this White Sox like they think he can. At the height of his career, he was a 30 home run man, 100 RBI.
He's had over 100 RBIs 4 different times in his career. The last time, 1993, with the Yankees, and 31 homers that year. But his time in New York was marked mostly by injuries. It's a great curveball, strike 2. Last year, it was the worst of all. He got into only 83 games with only 8 home runs, never got going. Now he has something to prove, but you see, back in his best years, he delivered, even though he had some injury problems even then. The most games he has ever played in a year was 158, but that was all the way back in 1987 with Kansas City. He has not played in more than 138 games since 1988. And it's 3-2. Also with the fastball missing. But, you know, they'd take 130 games from him if it was like what he did 3 years ago. If he could hit his 25 to 30 homers, he'll go for that.
Well, if he can stay injury-free, I'm sure that he will, you know, come close to some of those numbers. I don't think he'll hit 30 home runs, but he'll have some good years.
Olsen ends up walking him. Ventura will move to second. The score is 8-3. The White Sox ahead. The Tigers on the line for their 6th consecutive loss, and also what would be their 26th loss in the last 30 games. Now John Matlack goes out to the mound, the Tigers pitching coach. Now, Joe, why do you flinch every time Matlack goes out there?
Every time I see him, I flinch because I think of him pitching to me.
Well, I mean, what happened when he pitched?
Of all the guys that I ever faced, I had more problems with him than anyone. Is basically because I couldn't see the ball out of his hand quick enough. I picked this pitch up halfway to the plate. There he is when he was with the Mets. See how he'd hide the ball and I wouldn't pick it up till late. And you don't want to pick it up late when a guy's throwing 90+ miles an hour. And look at this. This is one of the greatest hitters ever, Rod Carew. He had trouble with him also in the All-Star game. There is Johnny Bench catching.
Yeah, Rod is thrilled that we showed that particular highlight.
Here's a guy that has over 3,000 hits and probably 150 strikeouts, and we show the strikeout.
Nothing personal for Rod, but apparently we just couldn't find any Joe Morgan.
I'm glad. I'm certainly glad you couldn't.
John Matlack. Ron Karkovice 0 for 4. 2 on, 1 out. And that misses.
But the worst thing, John, is Sparky Anderson would never give me an off day when Matlack pitched.
Sparky, and here we are in Detroit, and there's no Sparky.
You're right. That was the first thing I noticed when I walked in this afternoon. No Sparky. Although Larry Herndon, who's a coach, said he talked to Sparky today, and he said he's doing fine in Thousand Oaks, California.
Sparky's one of our fellow broadcasters now.
Works for the Angels. He does some home games for the Angels. And I think he started about a month ago, or he didn't start right away. The season didn't start. He didn't have his first game until well into the season. I know Sparky. I'd like to hear some of Sparky's
used to do the
criticism of the manager. That's what I want to hear. I want to see how he handles some of the managerial moves that some of the managers would make.
3-1 the count, and a walk. So Olsen with some wildness here, and the bases are loaded with 1 out. Back-to-back walks, and the batter will be Ray Durham, a switch hitter who is 3 for 4. Not good to walk the right-handed hitter who's hitting 204. With Ray Durham coming up, a switch hitter hitting 328.
Well, especially Durham hit a grand slam here yesterday, so you definitely do not want to give him too many opportunities where he gets comfortable with the bases loaded.
The Tigers bring the infield in. 8-3, the White Sox ahead. 1 out, bases loaded, 9th inning. And that's a strike. It's funny. When Olsen was at his very best, often, Joe, he couldn't get the fastball over, but could throw the curveball for strikes almost at will, which is just the opposite of what you would expect.
Well, a lot of pitchers who have the great curveballs believe in the curveball more than they do the fastball. So in the back of their mind, they really don't want to throw the fastball. See, and he'll turn it, release it high. The breaking wants to throw, so he makes a good effort and makes a good pitch.
Bases loaded. Ventura, who singled at third base. Tarnable, who walked at second. And Karkovice, who walked at first.
All the fastballs have been high.
And that one is up and in. Ball 2-1. Olson was never noted for having strong mechanics. And it was often believed that he put a little extra strain on his elbow with some poor mechanics. 2-1 now. Foul, back out of play. 2-2 the count.
That was a good pitch in that he got the fastball down that time to Durham.
Ray Durham in this series. He can be very sad to leave town. 6:36 for the weekend. Two and two the count. Strike three call. Grab some bench, buddy.
You know what I like about that, though, John? He took the pitch and he walked away. He didn't blame the umpire or whatever. I mean, I like that. We'll take a look at this pitch right there, out on the knees on the outside point. But see, he just turns and walks away. I guess that's what I like about it. I mean, he's not complaining or arguing with the umpire.
So Durham, well, now he's...
Yeah, but he didn't argue. That's what I like. I don't care. I mean, the point is, it's not going to do you any good.
Yeah. Here's Ozzie Guillen. Infield back in normal depth now. 8-3 the White Sox, top of the ninth inning. Guillen is 1 for 4, a single and a run batted in. That was back in the sixth inning. Greg Olson, the third Tigers pitcher of this game. The other two, their line's not very strong. Greg Gore, 4 innings plus, 5 runs, 7 hits. Jose Lima, 4 innings, 3 runs, 6 hits. And of course, for Lima, that's a little better than average for the Tigers so far. The pitching has been that bad. Frank Thomas tonight, 1 for 3 with a run batted in. They still have 8 runs on the board. 2-1 the count now. By the way, Greg Gore, remember he got hit in the shin with that line drive off the bat of Dave Martinez in the 4th inning. We understand he suffered a bruised shin, and his status will be evaluated day to day.
I would expect he'd have a bruised shin after that ball hit him like that.
The ball was shot right back at him. That's just foul. Ventura had to sidestep. 2-2 the count. Greg Olson is from Omaha, Nebraska, the home of the College World Series. Go to Omaha this year, Joe, just for old time's sake.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go, and because I think it's some anniversary or something there too. I'm going to go anyway. I'm going to think I'll take it.
But don't miss any Sunday night.
No.
You can go the rest of the week if you want, but I expect you there on Sunday.
Yeah, I think I'll go watch a couple of games, and then I'll come to Cincinnati and then probably go back, watch a couple more games.
So we get the Braves and the Reds 2 weeks. Next week, we've got the Mariners hosting the Yankees and most likely Dwight Gooden on the mound for New York. A little extra interest there because Gooden had the no-hitter. That one is a base hit into right field. Ventura in to score. Tarnable will stop at third. Ozzie Guillen with his second hit and second RBI. It is 9-3. Chicago.
No, Ozzie Guillen will battle you, and he slashes and he cuts and does a lot of things at the plate, but you'll make a pitch that he can handle. Breaking ball there was in, and he pulls it into right field. Now watch, he thrown him away and he slapped him down the right left field line. He waits on this breaking ball and just, you know, hacks and pulls it in the hole for a base hit. Nice dive there by Mark Lewis, but he couldn't come up with it.
Well, Ozzie Guillen almost never walks, but he also almost always puts the ball in play. Tony Phillips. He is 2 for 5 tonight. A single and a triple and 2 runs scored. Now on Friday, in an extra inning game, the White Sox put 11 runs on the board against Tiger pitching. Yesterday, they scored 16 times. And they're 1 away from hitting double figures again. Off the fist foul. 1 ball, 1 strike. Sunday was, we mentioned, Gooden, probably at the Kingdome. You know, the Yankees might get rained out before that. That might change things.
Let's hope not.
But otherwise, he should pitch next Sunday. And, of course, the Yankees once had a pitcher, Allie Reynolds, who pitched 2 no-hitters in 1 year. That is a fastball for a strike. 1-2 the count. And, of course, this Tuesday when he pitches, although we won't be there live with ESPN unless something historic happens again, but only one man in history has ever pitched back-to-back no-hitters. That's Johnny Vandermeer, the Cincinnati Reds. Now the 1-2 pitch off the outside. Also with 16 consecutive no-hit innings. Cy Young once threw 23 consecutive no-hit innings, and Vandermeer, when he had the 2 consecutive no-hitters, fell a little bit short of that. So Gooden got a lot of things that could blossom if he continues to be that overpowering next Tuesday night in his next start. And I guess also we'd be remiss, since we're talking about Dwight Gooden so much, Joe, to send along our best wishes to his dad, who underwent open heart surgery in the Tampa area. Dwight, the day after the no-hitter, went down there to be with his father, dedicated the no-hitter to his dad, and then dedicated this season to his father. Phillips stays alive. 2-2 the count. 2 down, 3 men on in the 9th inning. Greg Olson, this was one of the problems he had when he was a closer. I mean, he's thrown 36 pitches in this inning. It's tough to, you know, put him in to get some work in, because he was liable to throw so many pitches that it would be hard to get him in the next day if you really needed it. Sometimes he's just all over the place, and he has been in this inning. 2-2. 3-2. There's that fastball again, missing very badly. So they'll all be going. Tarnable from third, Karkovice from second, Guillen from first. White Sox with 9 runs and 15 hits on the board. There they go. And that one is fouled off to the left. Still 3-2. Olsen will have to try it again. Tony Phillips. Now, most of his at-bats are like this. I mean, the count goes deep. He fouls off pitches. He's a tough out. There's Karkovice over at second. Tarnable was at third. Guillen over at first. Base hit. Run number 10 is in. Here comes Karkovice. Now he's held up, and Fryman dropped the cutoff throw. They had a chance to nail Karkovice as he'd come around third base. Tony Phillips with his 3rd hit, and with a 3rd consecutive game in Detroit. The White Sox are in double figures.
Well, it's a fastball away by Greg Olson. See, it's tailing away Phillips. Good job of hitting him. He just slaps it in the hole. See a third baseman, Fryman, trying to cover that hole, but Phillips lines it in there for a base hit. And watch Karkovice. He's under a full head of steam there, but they hold him up. And they can't cut it off in time to make a play on him, but he gets back. They're playing station to station here. They're singling and 1 base at a time. And they have reached those double figures you're talking about, right?
Yeah. Here's Darren Lewis. We understand that this is the 2nd consecutive weekend that the Tigers have given up runs in double figures. Last week, the Yankees did it in 3 straight games, and you can see that in 11 of the last 24 games they've given up 10 or more. Darren Lewis with a count of 1-1. 2 down, bases loaded. By the way, I had said the runners were going on that 3-2 pitch to Phillips, and they were not. 3-2, 2 down. That's the standard form, but they were not running when Phillips hit that single. And I guess, as if to say here, we're not trying to rub it in, guys. I don't know, but you always see him going with 3-2 and 2 down.
Well, you're supposed to go.
1-2 now to Lewis. Darren is 0 for 2. since he entered for the injured Dave Martinez, sprained a hamstring. 2-2. Well, Olson having a hard time putting anybody away here. It's all over the place. Bullpen activity for the Tigers. This will be Olson's 44th pitch of this inning. Two runs are in for Detroit. 10-3 the score for Chicago. Curveball. And he'll have to throw at least one more. Well, we'll keep an eye on those runners, see if they run this time. There's Mike Myers, the left-hander, up in the bullpen. On deck is Frank Thomas. 3-2. The runners, they do sort of take off.
They start jogging. Yeah, they start jogging. They didn't make a definitive break, but they jogged toward the next base.
White Sox. If the season were to end tonight, they would be the team in the wild card position in the American League. Runners go. There's a long drive to left field. Lewis has hit a grand slam. The second grand slam of the game for the White Sox. And for Greg Olson, disaster has struck here.
Well, you put yourself in a position by going 3-2 where you let the hitter know that I have to throw him a fastball. You know he's not going to walk. You don't want to walk anybody with the bases loaded. And Darren Lewis takes advantage of it. He hit a home run here yesterday, too. So Darren Lewis on a hot streak with the long ball. Fastball in. And Darren Lewis gets enough of it and lines it over the wall in left field for a grand slam. 2 grannies in one game for the White Sox.
So Greg Olson is gone. Mike Myers comes on to replace him, and Darren Lewis, he's going to hate to leave Detroit too. We'll be back. Frank Thomas takes ball 1 from Mike Myers. Thomas, the 9th batter of the inning. It's 14-3. The White Sox ahead. Thomas fouls this one off. Well, more humiliation for this Tigers pitching staff. Their team earned run average is now at 7.36. Now, there's a long way to go in the season. Whether or not it will stay up there or anywhere close to that, we don't know at this point. But right now, they continue to be not just bad, but historically bad. Mark Lewis throws out Thomas, and mercifully the inning has ended. 14-3. The Tigers coming up in the last of the 9th when we get back. It is now 14-3. More misery for the Tigers here at Tiger Stadium. The White Sox with another romp here at Tiger Stadium. Frank Thomas, and he will be the Sunday night conversation among the subjects, the incredible performances of baseball's current sluggers.
I just think the athletes are bigger, stronger, and faster today. You see baseball players now spending a lot of time in the weight room. I think that's something that is making hitting more awesome. No one really wants to give the players the respect that they deserve. They're great power hitters in this game today.
Well, I have to disagree with that, John. You give them their respect. You've said that, basically.
Yeah. Well, I haven't heard anything but respect for Frank Thomas around baseball. But it's true. I mean, anytime there's a lot of runs being scored, immediately the conspiracy theory starts. The ball is juiced, and so on and so forth. And of course, it's been that way for 70 years. When Ruth hit a lot of home runs, the ball was juiced. Hornsby hit 400 and hit 40 homers, the ball was juiced. When Maris hit 61, the ball was juiced, so on and so forth. And at this point, I mean, runs are being scored here against this Tiger Ball club. And an historic clip. Mark Lewis singles to center against Brian Kaiser. 1930, the entire National League hit over 300. And that was the year that the Phillies gave up more runs than any other team in history. Sports Center right after the game. NBA playoff action, NHL action, a big upset today. And the conversation with Frank Thomas Linda Cohn and Dan Patrick. Where's Keith Olbermann? Where? Ball one to John Flaherty. He is 0 for 3. 14-3. The White Sox ahead. Now in the 1930 season, the Philadelphia Phillies hit .315 as a team. They scored more than 6 runs a game. A very potent offensive club. Not many teams hit .315 as a team. They had 2 guys hit over .380. Lefty O'Doul hit .383, and Chuck Klein, a Hall of Famer, hit .386 that year. There's a high fly ball to the left side. Under it, Phillips, and Flaherty is out number 1 in the last of the 9th inning. 1990 or 1930, and Joe, I mentioned all this hitting. Look at the record though. 52 and 102. They finished 40 games out. They made 250 errors.
I was going to say the defense had to be porous.
Yeah, porous. That's a good word for it. Yeah. The shortstop that year, Tommy Theveno, made 62 errors all by himself. But the Tigers, their ERA is not even close. Look at that. 6.71 for the Phillies, the worst ever. The Tigers right now, 7.36. But I'm expecting it will go down. But it certainly didn't go down this week, did it? I mean, I don't think this staff is going to be here the whole year.
Well, obviously there are going to be some changes. You mentioned Oliveira's coming back. Justin Thompson's coming up. So they're going to have a change of their starting rotation, maybe more than just those 2 in the next couple of weeks.
Singleton the hitter. Dwayne Singleton batting for Barty, and Phillips makes the catch. And Dwayne Singleton is retired. And that's the second out, and here is Chad Curtis. But I mean, you know, we've seen teams that go with a youth movement. They say we're starting to build for the future. But I mean, this Tiger Ball Club, this is rather extreme. I mean, this pitching staff is not just bad. It's not just young. I mean, it's historically bad. This may be the worst staff right now of all time. Chad Curtis. And that's a strike on the inside. 0 for 2. Although, and we did see a ray of hope with Greg Gore early on.
Right.
He's not that far away from maybe being a guy who could be a credible big league pitcher.
I agree.
1-1. Oh, and I know you pointed out some differences between himself and White Sox starter Wilson Alvarez. As you see the bad news over the weekend, which is gnawing at the inside to that man, Cecil Fielder. And that ends the ball game. Guillen to Durham at second base, forcing Lewis. And the carnage has ended here. And the Detroit Tigers get swept at home, giving up 41 runs in 3 games. Robin Ventura early on with the first grand slam that broke it open. Next Sunday night, remember, SportsCenter is coming up next. Stay tuned for that. Next Sunday night, Dwight Gooden and the Yankees at Seattle. We'll see you then. John Miller for Joe Morgan. Good